Chapter 922. Deep in the night, two figures sneaked into the deepest part of the palace without anyone noticing. The palace had a special basement that was not open to outsiders, but it was not a problem for these two daring fellows. After exploring for a while, they found the entrance. However, a group of armed guards stood guard at the entrance, making it impossible for them to force their way in. They wanted to sneak in without anyone noticing. The two looked at each other and Tianqianzi said, "You go and lead them away." "Why me?" "Because I'm your senior. Respect the old and love the young. Didn't your kindergarten teacher teach you that?" Tianqianzi said with a laugh. Tang Jing rolled his eyes and rushed out in a flash. "What's that?" The guard only saw a blur in front of his eyes and did not see clearly what it was. He just subconsciously shouted, "You guys go over there and take a look." A person who looked like a leader sent out some of his subordinates, but he still stood guard and did not move. Tianqianzi was stunned. "Damn, why didn't you guys chase after them? Why did you guys stay behind?" The plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain had failed. Tang Jing shook off his pursuers and appeared behind Tianqianzi asking, "How is it? Why aren't you moving?" Square root Tianqianzi pointed at the door and said, "Look for yourself. How do I get in?" "You're really smart. You didn't fall for it." Tang Jing was surprised. The more cautious the other side was, the more important the thing behind the door was. "Actually, we can use illusions to blind their eyes and then sneak in without anyone noticing. But we have to open the door, then they will definitely notice. This is the most difficult part." Tang Jing analyzed. Tianqianzi said helplessly, "We can't knock them out and directly charge in, and we can't sneak in without anyone noticing. So what do you think we should do?" "You still have the nerve to ask me. You were the one who brought this up." Tang Jing was speechless. "Okay, then I'm going in." "Don't even think about taking the crystals later," Tianqianzi retorted. "Who said I don't want it? Of course I want it. You're the only one who's full, but the whole family isn't hungry. I have so many people around me and everyone needs crystals." Tang Jing wouldn't do it. What a miser. "Don't you know how to respect the old and love the young? Give me more," Tianqianzi muttered. "Hee hee, you're already so powerful at such an old age. You should leave this kind of improvement opportunity to us, the younger generation. Stop talking nonsense and think of a way." Tang Jing stared at the group of guards. Just as he was at his wit's end, the door opened. Their pupils constricted as they looked at each other. Then they stared at the door. A few people in white coats walked out. These people had solemn expressions and tightly knitted brows. "Why are there doctors here?" Tianqianzi asked curiously. Tang Jing shook his head. "These are not doctors. Those who wear white coats are not necessarily doctors, just like those who ride white horses are not necessarily Tangseng. These are researchers. Look at that old man. I seem to have seen him in a popular science program before. He's a very awesome scientist." "Scientist? What are these scientists doing coming out from under the palace in the middle of the night?" Tianqianzi was confused. Tang Jing was also confused, but when he saw the door open, he was overjoyed and said, "Don't worry about them. This is the best time for us to sneak in. Let's go." He quickly cast an illusion, which was equivalent to invisibility, and took the lead to rush towards the door. "Boy, wait for me." Tianqianzi followed suit. Almost at the moment the door closed, he rushed in with Tang Jing. Bang! Behind them came the sound of the door closing. A feeling of isolation hit their hearts. The two subconsciously looked back and found that the door was very heavy. It was almost impossible to move it with just the strength of their hands. "Don't worry about the door. Let's go forward first," Tianqianzi said. Tang Jing nodded and looked around. After confirming that there were no cameras, he was relieved and said in a low voice, "This is the most secret place, but there are no cameras. This means that His Majesty the King does not want the things here to be made public. He did not even leave behind a single image. Did you see those scientists just now? They were searched when they left. This is definitely not normal. This old king is quite cautious. Unfortunately, in front of me it's useless to be cautious. However, you are right. It makes sense for him to be so cautious. After all, the crystal is too important." Tang Jing did not refute, but in his heart another thought emerged. Crystal is very important to cultivators, but for ordinary people, it is of little value. It is not worth such a tight protection. However, for the time being he could not figure out the reason. He could only continue to move forward. The basement was very spacious. Even the entrance passage was like a main road. The ventilation was good, and there was not a trace of cold or damp air. The two carefully moved forward. Not long after, their eyes lit up as they came to a huge laboratory. This was a laboratory set up in the basement. It was empty. Tang Jing suddenly realized that those scientists must be working in this laboratory. But the key was why the laboratory was set up under the royal palace. Was it necessary to hide like this? He shook his head. He really could not figure it out. Tian Chanzi reluctantly said, "It seems that I have to admit that you are right. Those people are scientists, not doctors." Looking at the bottles and jars in the laboratory as well as all kinds of cutting-edge instruments, Tang Jing analyzed, "The experiments they are doing here must be top secret." Tian Chanzi did not care. "I don't care what experiments they are. I only want the crystal." "Then let's split up and look. There are so many cabinets here. I don't know where the crystal is hidden." Tian Chanzi waved his hand and walked to the left. So Tang Jing walked to the right. Looking at the dazzling array of bottles and jars and instruments, Tang Jing's eyes were dark. He simply could not see what the research was. However, the most important thing was to find the crystal. He began to rummage through the cabinets. But after rummaging for a long time, he still could not find the crystal. When he used his energy to investigate, he could clearly feel that there was a huge energy source hidden in the basement. It was the same as the crystal. So, the crystal must be in this laboratory. Tang Jing's attention was suddenly attracted by a thick cable on the ground. The cable was connected to a wall in the laboratory. This cable was connected to a huge instrument. On the screen above, there was a ripple jumping very much like a heartbeat monitor in a hospital. But the jumping curve was obviously much faster than a human's heartbeat. The rising and falling waves were continuous. Tang Jing had always been very curious about the research direction of this laboratory. When he saw the ripple on the screen, he had an idea. He turned around and walked along the cable. When he came to the wall, the cable penetrated from the ground, and in front of him was a huge iron door. What was behind the iron door? "Tang Jing, hurry up and find the crystal." "What are you doing there? Facing the wall to reflect on your mistakes?" Tian Chanzi saw Tang Jing in a daze and kept urging him. "It's really strange. The crystal is clearly here. Why can't I find it?" Tang Jing moved and shouted, "Tian Chanzi, come here. I think there is a situation here." "What's the situation?" Tian Chanzi rushed over like a gust of wind. He also saw the iron door and said in surprise, "You think the crystal is behind the door?" Tang Jing shook his head and said he did not know. "Open the door and everything will be clear." Tian Chanzi could not wait. He pressed his hands on the iron door and pushed with all his strength. The iron door made a creaking sound, but it was not pushed open. "Hey, this is strange. I don't believe I can't push it open." Tian Chanzi stretched his body and angrily tried to push the iron door. Tang Jing burst out laughing. Tian Chanzi turned around and looked at him. "What are you laughing at?" "Tian Chanzi, I'm laughing at how stupid you are." Tang Jing could not help but say, "You're the stupid one," Tian Chanzi said in a bad mood. Tang Jing shook his head and directly pressed a button next to the iron door. The iron door opened. So it was that simple? Tian Chanzi was stunned. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Tang Jing laughed and said with a shrug, "I didn't have time to say it and you already used all your strength." "Who can you blame?" "You brat, you are deliberately making fun of me." Tian Chanzi helplessly glared at him. "Let's see what's inside first." Tang Jing pointed inside and walked in. Tian Chanzi also hurriedly followed in. The space behind the iron door was not big, but there was an amber-like thing standing in front of them. A surge of energy hit them in the face. Tang Jing could not help but take a deep breath. He felt refreshed, but his eyes were wide open as he looked at the scene in front of him. Too shocking. This was not amber but a crystal as tall as a wall. The 2 crystals that the king gave them were not even worth mentioning. This was a treasure trove. Tian Chanzi also opened his eyes wide. After a long while, he laughed and scolded, "Damn, why is the king so stingy? I am his daughter's master, and he only gave me a small one. It's like a drop of water in the ocean." Tian Chanzi could not help but extend his hand and press it on the crystal. Whoosh whoosh. Powerful energy gushed out from the crystal, forming a gust of wind on Tian Chanzi's arm. His expression became extremely strange. Back then, when he was in the prehistoric heavenly tomb, he was lucky enough to reach the 9th stage of Yuanying. Later on, he used the crystal to consolidate his cultivation, but when he wanted to go further, he did not succeed in entering the semi-god realm. But at this moment, after absorbing this energy, he felt that every pore of his was filled with innate qi. The innate qi surged and waves of thunder came out from his body. The air around his body surged, creating circles of ripples. Tian Chanzi was wild with joy and laughed. "My cultivation is about to break through the semi-god realm. I'm finally going to succeed." He hurriedly sat down cross-legged and circulated his energy to digest this huge amount of energy and prepare for the upcoming breakthrough. Tang Jing was also happy for him. This way he would have the help of 2 experts of the semi-god realm. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the cause of all this, but suddenly discovered that the crystal had actually changed. Veins that looked like blood vessels appeared on the crystal. Chapter 923. The veins on the crystal were very clear and were similar to blood vessels. There was a liquid slowly flowing inside. What is this? Tang Jing was shocked, but he found that the crystal was changing more and more. Soon it became completely transparent. There's something inside the crystal. Tang Jing's eyes widened as he saw an unknown creature appear inside the crystal. He found that the cables were forked into strands and attached to the crystal. Could the wavy lines on the monitor be the heartbeat of this unknown creature? Was alive. He suppressed his violently beating heart and stared at it. He had never seen this creature before and he was sure that it was not a creature of this world. It was about the same size as an adult, but it was a 4-legged reptile. It had a very long tail that was like a sharp hook. The strangest thing was that its eyes were always open and reflected Tang Jing's figure. Tang Jing's heart trembled as he stared at those eyes. It was as if his soul was about to be sucked into them. What are you standing there for? Tian Chanzi's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Tang Jing's thoughts were interrupted. He turned his head to Tian Chanzi and said, Tian Chanzi, quickly look at the East Delta 3 West. Do you know what this is? What are you talking about? Let me tell you a piece of good news. You'll be jealous to death. I've already broken through to the deity transformation realm. If I meet the 100 Faces Star Sovereign in the future, I won't be completely helpless. Tian Chanzi said excitedly. Tang Jing acted as if he didn't hear him and anxiously urged, don't talk about yourself. Look inside the crystal, there's an unknown creature. What unknown creature? You stinking brat, even if you don't want to congratulate me, you don't have to find such an excuse to avoid me. Tian Chanzi's voice was a bit unhappy. What did you say? You didn't see the unknown creature? Tang Jing was shocked and quickly turned his head. He couldn't help but cry out, where's that thing? How come it's gone? It was clearly inside the crystal just now, and there were even vein-like arteries in the crystal. Tang Jing, are you dazzled by the surprise? Tian Chanzi asked. Tang Jing firmly shook his head. I'm absolutely not seeing things. Just now, the crystal became transparent, and I saw an unknown creature inside. Seeing that Tang Jing was so agitated and determined, Tian Chanzi frowned suspiciously. Was that really the case? He stared at the crystal. The crystal was not transparent, and it was no different from what he had seen before. Did you find any clues? Tang Jing hurriedly asked. Tian Chanzi shook his head as he found nothing. There's something strange about this crystal. Look at the cables connected to it. I suspect that they're used to detect the unknown creature inside the crystal. Moreover, there's a heartbeat, which means that it's a living creature. But I don't know why it was sealed in this crystal. Moreover, I suspect that it's not a creature from our world. Tang Jing analyzed in an orderly manner. Crystal is rare. It said that it's an object from the outside world, and the old king also told you that this crystal was brought by a meteorite from outer space. This large crystal must be an object from outer space. If there's really something sealed in it, it must be an object from outer space. Tian Chanzi nodded, agreeing with Tang Jing's statement. Human exploration of outer space was very limited. According to scientific theory, the creature sealed in this crystal was an alien creature. Human beings had been looking for evidence of the existence of alien creatures, but they didn't expect that the Swedish royal family would find it first. This also explained why the laboratory was built under the royal palace and was under such strict protection. However, this was only a scientific point of view. For Tang Jing and Tian Chanzi, they knew about the big world and the small world. The so-called alien creature was a creature from another big world or small world. This wasn't impossible. After all, the existence of the Outland and the world of ghosts had proven this point. Which world do you think it came from? Tang Jing asked curiously. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes. There are so many big worlds and small worlds. How could I know? However, if we want to find out what it is, it's easy to get it out. I don't think it's that easy. Tang Jing muttered. If it's really that easy, those scientists would have already gotten it out for research. Why keep it in the crystal? What's difficult for those scientists? Can it be difficult for me, Tian Chanzi? Tian Chanzi smiled proudly and didn't take it seriously. He directly slapped the crystal. The crystal only shook a few times, but it didn't crack as he expected. Tian Chanzi was surprised. He was very clear that the strength of his palm was enough to break the stone. This crystal was actually so strong. Ah, Tian Chanzi, now you know that it's too early to boast. Tang Jing laughed. Tian Chanzi's cheeks were red with anger. He said bitterly, I don't believe that I can't handle this thing. Tian Chanzi didn't admit defeat. He slapped down again. This time he used all his strength, but the crystal was still unbreakable. But what was unexpected was that the crystal changed. The blood vessel-like veins appeared again. Tian Chanzi subconsciously stopped and stared at the veins. Although Tang Jing had seen it once, it was still difficult to hide the shock in his heart when he saw it again. After a while the crystal became transparent. The unknown creature was vividly displayed in front of him. Heaven Monk's mouth was already wide open as he looked at this thing in disbelief. Especially that pair of eyes, it was firmly attracting people. What kind of monster is this? Tian Chanzi shook his head and exclaimed in surprise. Tang Jing looked deeply at the unknown creature. He silently asked the inner demons and Qiyu in his heart. Unfortunately, the two of them didn't know its origin. Although they were powerhouses from ancient times, they were still powerhouses of this world. They didn't know much about other worlds. After all, they hadn't even explored the sky beyond heaven, let alone other worlds. Seeing Tian Chanzi looking at him, Tang Jing helplessly shrugged and said, I can't answer you. Now you know that this crystal isn't that easy to split open, right? I'm afraid the king had to go through a lot of trouble to get those two crystals. Since they were able to get a little, then we can get a lot more. Tian Chanzi said, unwilling to give up. Tang Jing looked at the unknown creature and shook his head. No, I don't think we need to cut it open. Since it's a whole, then it has its own reason to exist. Moreover, since you just proved that you can absorb the energy in the crystal, then why do we need to cut it open? If we don't cut it open, then how will we divide the crystal and cultivate? Tian Chanzi asked suspiciously. Tang Jing smiled faintly. Who said that we can't cultivate if we don't split it? This crystal is dead, but we people are alive. As long as we gather everyone in front of the crystal and absorb the crystal's energy while cultivating, won't the problem be solved? Don't you cultivators have some kind of holy lands? We can also make our own holy lands. Tian Chanzi's eyes lit up and he praised, You little brat, your brain is really clever. This method is feasible, but who do we put the crystal with? Tang Jing laughed involuntarily and said generously, How about we put it with you? Are you really willing? With this, you can quickly improve your cultivation. Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Jing in surprise. What's there to be reluctant about? You've helped me so much. Moreover, the higher your cultivation, won't I also benefit from it? Seeing that Tang Jing didn't seem to be duplicitous, Tian Chanzi praised and said, Hey, it's really not a waste of my kindness to you. But you can rest assured that I, Tian Chanzi, am also an open and above-board person. After we go back, we'll find a place to put this crystal, and then everyone can absorb the energy together to cultivate. Tang Jing himself had Qiyu's heart blood, so he didn't care much. Suddenly he thought of a problem and said, When the energy in the crystal is absorbed, the crystal will melt like ice. Finally, when we finish absorbing the crystal's energy, the crystal will completely melt, then wouldn't this thing be free? Hey, what you said is actually a problem. But I don't think it's that powerful. We have so many people, why should we be afraid of it? Tian Chanzi didn't care, he didn't put it in his eyes at all. Tang Jing didn't say anything. This creature from another world couldn't be careless, but for the time being he didn't have a better way. He could only improve his cultivation. Even if there was a problem in the future, he would have a stronger strength to deal with it. While the two of them were talking, the crystal returned to its original appearance, and the unknown creature disappeared without a trace. Tian Chanzi didn't hold back. With a wave of his hand, he wanted to put the crystal into his sumaru bag. Hey, strange, why isn't there any reaction? Tian Chanzi's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Why isn't there any reaction? Tang Jing was also very surprised. Tian Chanzi stared at the crystal, somewhat anxiously said, It's really against me today, I don't believe it. Tian Chanzi held his breath, focused his mind and cast a spell, trying to put the crystal into his sumaru bag. But the crystal still didn't have any reaction. The sumaru bag absorbed all things and this had never happened before. It was too strange. Tian Chanzi scratched his head in distress and said, Could it be that the level of my sumaru bag is too low? His sumaru bag was an earth-grade magic treasure, and its divine ability was already very extraordinary. It could even take in a heaven-grade magic treasure, but it couldn't deal with this crystal. Tian Chanzi was very angry. This crystal was specifically against him. He used all his skills and sweated, but there was no reaction. He was about to go crazy. Damn crystal, why is my summer bag not working? Are you trying to anger me to death? Tian Shanzi fiercely kicked the crystal a few times and roared angrily. This was like seeing a delicious meal, but there was no way to eat it. This feeling was really unpleasant. Looking at his helpless appearance, Tang Zheng couldn't help but laugh. Tian Shanzi, why are you so angry with the crystal? Let's think of a way. We can't just not take it, right? Chapter 924. Looking at his suspicious eyes, Tang Zheng's heart moved and he said, "You can't, but that doesn't mean I can't. Don't brag too much. Let's try it and we'll know." Tang Zheng walked over, casting a spell, and the Sumeru world on his wrist sparkled. Tian Shanzi was suddenly shocked, patting his head as he suddenly realized, "How could I forget about your Sumeru world? Sumeru world is a heaven-grade magic treasure, 1 grade higher than my Sumeru bag, maybe?" He blushed a little. Tang Zheng's mind was completely focused, and with a "so," the crystal disappeared. He immediately saw the crystal in Sumeru world. "Ah, you really can." Tang Zheng was very happy. Tian Shanzi shook his head, depressed. "Is there any justice? My cultivation is so much higher than his, but he still beat me." Looking at his depressed appearance, Tang Zheng patted him on the shoulder and said, "Tian Shanzi, don't be discouraged, can't you have a bit of the demeanor of a senior? You keep showing off, isn't it just a heaven-grade storage magic treasure? It won't be long, I will also upgrade my Sumeru bag to a heaven-grade magic treasure." Tian Shanzi said faintly, looking like a bullied little wife. Tang Zheng couldn't help but laugh. "AI, you got lucky again. This crystal is in your Sumeru world, you can absorb as much energy as you want, your cultivation will definitely advance by leaps and bounds." Tian Shanzi shook his head and said enviously, "Anyway, the outside door is closed, we can't go out, we have to wait for those scientists to come in tomorrow, then we can leave without anyone knowing. There are still a few hours, I'll take out the crystal, we can both absorb it to improve our cultivation." Tang Zheng said generously. "Your spirit is commendable, you didn't eat it alone." Tian Shanzi praised, "But I just broke through, I still need to consolidate, I don't need to rush to absorb the energy." "Oh, then I won't be polite, you can guard me." "You little brat, you're not polite." Tian Shanzi laughed and scolded, "Good, you're now a 9th grade golden core, I want to see if you can break through to the Yuanying realm in one go. Don't look down on me, if you can, why can't I?" Tang Zheng was full of confidence. "Then I'll wait and see." Tang Zheng's heart sank, the crystal was in Sumeru world, even if he didn't touch it, he would still be able to absorb the energy inside. As soon as he thought of this, a torrential surge of energy gathered in his body like a great river. This energy's chi, its energy's energy, cheese energy was cheese chi. S is cheese. At the same time, he also found that once he absorbed the energy, the crystal would become transparent, and the unknown creature inside would stand lifelike in front of him. He didn't care, his mind was focused on cultivation, but he didn't notice the two deep and mysterious eyes rolling. "Hey Chiyu, you're really lucky, young man, with this crystal, you don't need to keep absorbing your blood, you can preserve your strength," the inner demon suddenly said. Chiyu was shocked and angrily retorted, "Inner demons, what nonsense are you talking about?" He was afraid that Tang Zheng would continue to have ideas about the blood. The inner demons didn't intend to let him go and continued, "I'm not talking nonsense, if your blood is fine, then it's possible for you to occupy the young man's body in the future, right? You're trying to drive a wedge between us, if you let me escape I'll kill you at all costs." Chiyu angrily shouted. "Do you dare? If you kill me I'll occupy your body, haha, this seems to be a good deal. You didn't dare to do this in the past after so many years, could it be that your courage has grown?" "I don't think so." The inner demon's voice was full of provocation, making Chiyu furious, but there was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng heard these words, of course he understood the inner demon's intentions, and also understood Chiyu's thoughts. Although he had the crystal, he wouldn't give up on absorbing the blood. After all, this could weaken Chiyu's strength, but he also had to be careful of the inner demon's strength. If he could find a way to weaken the inner demons, then it would be perfect, weakening them together they wouldn't be able to jump around. One day he could completely eliminate these two hidden dangers. Tang Zheng's thoughts moved, and he quickly focused his mind, concentrating on cultivating. The Jindan was getting bigger and bigger, becoming the size of a fist, and the Jindan was turning from solid to liquid little by little. He wasn't surprised, as he had already asked Tian Shanzi about this process, and understood that this was the transformation of the Jindan. After a while the Jindan finally completely melted, turning into a liquid just like melted liquid gold. All of this was an autonomous process, but the next step had to be controlled by Tang Zheng, as this was related to the strength of the condensed yuanying. He used his mind to control this mass of liquid, and continued to absorb the true qi for the liquid to shape. The liquid was stretched little by little, condensing into a human brain, but the face of this brain was still very blurry, and the face couldn't be seen clearly. At the same time, the torso also condensed, and the limbs began to spread outwards little by little. Time passed little by little, and after a long time, the initial human shape was finally successful. Tang Jing wasn't too happy because this was only the first step of the long journey, and there was still a lot of work to be done. Otherwise he wouldn't have asked Tian Chanzi to protect him. If this process was interrupted, the yuanying would collapse, and there would be no hope for advancement. In the worst case, the Jindan would be destroyed and he would die immediately. For a practitioner, this was a more important step than condensing the Jindan, and he had to be more careful. The next step was more delicate work. He began to control the true qi to attack the various parts of the yuanying, gradually making each part no different from a real person, and even the lines on the palm appeared. This was a delicate sculpting process, just like sculpting a puppet, except that he was sculpting yuanying. Gradually, the outline of the face became clear, and it turned out to be a miniature version of Tang Jing. Yes, yuanying was a miniature version of a practitioner. Once the yuanying was mastered, one would have all kinds of supernatural powers in the future. Phew. It was a success. Tang Jing lightly panted, his brain tense, and he was in a state of high tension. Even his vest was soaked. A yuanying identical to Tang Jing appeared. However, it was only the appearance that was the same, but the inside of the body was different. His future work was to transform the yuanying into a yuanying that was identical to himself, and this was the entire cultivation content of the yuanying realm. When the yuanying was transformed into a yuanying that was identical to himself, he would successfully cross the yuanying realm and reach the soul formation realm. The soul formation realm was to transform the yuanying into something other than its appearance, and to give it intelligence. Yuanying was equivalent to a new life, and it was connected to the mind of the practitioner. When the soul formation realm ended, and the practitioner entered the Mahayana realm, the yuanying would be able to leave the body of the practitioner and roam the world. This was equivalent to a real clone, an extension of the mind, and it was very powerful. Back then, the 100 Faces Star Lord had created many clones. They seemed real, but in fact they were just appearances. Each clone could not be compared to the real body, and could not reach the strength of the real body. However, yuanying was different. The yuanying could be the same strength as the real body. When the yuanying cultivated, the real body could also enjoy the increase in power. This was why when two people cultivated together, it would naturally be twice the result with half the effort. Of course, the further one cultivated, the more difficult it would be. Without the help of the yuanying, it would be difficult to cultivate in the Mahayana realm. There's still a long way to go. Tang Jing could not help but sigh to himself. However, looking at himself that was identical to himself, he felt a sense of accomplishment. The strength of the yuanying was related to the carving skills of the cultivator. Tang Jing cultivated the flying immortals from heaven, which was very helpful in controlling his true qi, so he could control his true qi to do such fine work. If a carver were to do this, I'm afraid it would be better. Tang Jing was whimsical. However, as soon as this thought appeared, it was as if a bolt of lightning flashed in his mind, and he was stunned. The ancient Clear Heaven Scroll, which had been silent, had a reaction. The ancient Clear Heaven Scroll was a set of vital cultivation techniques that led him on the path of cultivation. It was also the foundation of his cultivation. Ever since he started cultivating it, there was nothing too unusual about the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll. Nevertheless, when this thought flashed through his mind, the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll underwent a huge change. The words on the ancient scroll floated up and combined with each other to form another set of words. What's this? Tang Jing was really shocked. He did not miss a single word and read the text very carefully. He could not calm down. This was because the text was a set of methods to sculpt the yuanying. Moreover, there was a set of carving knife techniques that was so superb that he was almost stunned. Although he was not a carving master, he could tell that this set of knife techniques had the ability to transform something rotten into something magical. He was just envious of a carving master, and now this superb carving knife technique appeared. He wondered why he was so lucky. The ancient Clear Heaven Scroll has never changed before. Could it be that it will only change after I reach the yuanying realm? He was a smart person. After carefully thinking about it, he gradually understood. So it turns out that the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll only exerts its power at the back. Only when my cultivation reaches the nascent soul stage will it gradually reveal its mystical aspects. No wonder Heaven Monk and the demon clan fought to the death for it. If he told this news to Tian Chanzi, who knew what he would think? Tang Jing mischievously thought. He suppressed the messy thoughts in his mind. Because the promotion process was not over, he had to guide the true Qi to enter the Yuanying realm. Only when the true Qi entered the Yuanying realm could he truly step into the Yuanying realm. The true Qi entered the Yuanying realm. The Yuanying realm was formed by the condensation of the golden core, so it was naturally golden. Without any warning, a ball of true fire in the brain sea of consciousness quickly entered the Dantian along the meridians. The purple true fire and true Qi merged into one and entered the Yuanying realm. Chapter 925. The golden light around the Yuanying gradually faded, and a purple light began to spread from the inside out. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. His Dantian had gradually transformed into a purple palace, and this purple color was a sign of the transformation. Now that his purple palace had reached the large success stage, the Yuanying no longer had a trace of gold, and was now a light purple color. In the future, the higher his cultivation, the deeper the purple color of the Yuanying would become. Looking at the purple light emitting from the inside out of the Yuanying, Tang Zheng smiled with satisfaction. It was a success. He had successfully advanced to the first-grade Yuanying realm. Hey you little brat, you really succeeded. First-grade Yuanying realm, this crystal's energy is truly powerful. Tian Chanzi exclaimed in admiration. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and said, "That's because my innate talent is extraordinary. Didn't you just say that it was impossible for me to succeed?" Cough cough. Tian Chanzi awkwardly coughed and said with a guilty conscience, "Horses can make mistakes and people can make mistakes. I also have times when I make mistakes. Just you wait, there will be a day when I surpass you." Tang Zheng was full of confidence. Tian Chanzi's face stiffened and said with a guilty conscience, "Don't bite off more than you can chew." Although he said that, with Tang Zheng's terrifying cultivation speed, that day really wouldn't be too far away. Tian Chanzi felt an unprecedented pressure. Tang Zheng chuckled and didn't continue to discourage Tian Chanzi. He said, "It's already morning, the scientists will be back soon. Then let's wait and make preparations. Hehe, I really want to see their expressions when they discover that the crystal disappeared." Tian Chanzi said with a mischievous smile. "Don't play pranks, those people will definitely be as anxious as ants on a hot pan. His Majesty the King will definitely be furious. Do you think they will suspect us?" Tang Jing asked thoughtfully. Tian Chanzi said without thinking, "So what if they suspect us? What can he do to us? I am his daughter's master. Since they have no use for the crystals they left behind, wouldn't it be good to give them to their master and make the best use of them?" "Alright, you're very reasonable." The two of them quickly came to the door. Not long after, they saw the door slowly open. The two of them quickly used illusion to become invisible. They quickly passed through the scientists and disappeared without a trace. The two of them secretly returned to their respective rooms. Not long after, there was a knock on the door. Mu Hongyan stood outside the door, her face glowing. Last night, she slept a little late because she was both looking forward to it and was afraid. She thought that Tang Zheng would sneak into her room in the middle of the night. But she didn't expect that this guy would actually become obedient, which was really out of her expectations. But even so, he was nourished during the day and he was able to truly cultivate the wondrous intent art. His mental state was unprecedentedly good. Big Sister Mu, your cultivation has risen really quickly. You've already reached the 6th grade of foundation establishment. Tang Zheng was surprised. He helped Mu Hongyan change her muscles and cleanse her marrow, but it didn't really increase her cultivation. Instead, she had to rely on her own cultivation to fully understand the mysteries of the wondrous intent art and obtain the corresponding cultivation. There was a certain difference between muscle and marrow transformation and wisdom infusion. Wisdom infusion was to directly and forcibly increase a person's cultivation. If the foundation wasn't solid, then it would be very harmful to one's future cultivation. In addition, using wisdom infusion required an extremely high cultivation, but muscle and marrow transformation had a slightly lower cultivation requirement. It only improved a person's physique and increased their cultivation speed. This had a drawback. It was easy to cultivate in the beginning, even easier than many geniuses, but the further one went, the more difficult it would be. Mu Hongyan was the best proof. Her talent was average, but she actually broke through 6 levels in one night. This was enough to make many geniuses feel ashamed of their inferiority. Even if it was Tang Zheng, he was completely outclassed. But in the future, her cultivation would be more difficult than Tang Zheng's. But Tang Zheng was confident that when his cultivation increased in the future, He would be able to find a way to solve this problem. Mu Hongyan happily said, "This is all thanks to you. I never thought that I would have a day like this. This is what you deserve. Big sister Mu still has to work hard and strive to reach a higher cultivation. I will find a magic weapon for you." Magic weapon, really? Mu Hongyan's eyes lit up, and then she looked at him with a strange expression. The other people's magic weapons were also given by you, right? Could it be that only after becoming your woman can I have a magic weapon? Tang Zheng almost choked on his own saliva. He never expected that she would ask such a tricky question. He resentfully said, "How could that be? In the past I always thought that you were honest, but now I know that I was wrong. I saw that Shirshir, Dingdang and Qingmei all have magic weapons that you gave them. Could it be that they are all your women? Oh, that's not right. There is also Wu. She is not a cultivator, so she doesn't have a magic weapon. But I heard that you taught her a set of fire underworld divine palm." Stop. Tang Zheng quickly surrendered. This woman's intuition was too terrifying. She actually guessed everything correctly. Even Lu Qingmei was able to guess it, which he did not expect. "What, did I say something wrong?" Mu Hongyan asked with a smile that was not a smile. Tang Zheng awkwardly said, "Big sister Mu, don't expose my shortcomings." Mu Hongyan raised her eyebrows and said, "Then let's see if you still dare to bully me in the future." "Big sister Mu, your words wrongly accuse me. I have never bullied you." Tang Zheng complained. "Then yesterday you treated me like that." Mu Hongyan's eyes seemed to be rippling with water. Tang Zheng's heart moved. He could not help but grab her hand and said, "That was not bullying." Mu Hongyan's breathing became hurried. She fiercely glared at him and said, "Do you want to die? You dare to mess around in front of the gate. You two woke up so early." And walked over from behind. Mu Hongyan acted as if she had been electrocuted. She quickly retracted her hand and said with a guilty conscience, "I came to find him to discuss work." "You two are so serious. Discussing work so early." And did not pay attention to Mu Hongyan's expression. Her eyes were shining as she stared at Tang Zheng and asked, "Let's go to a new place to play today." "You're still playing? Yesterday you almost lost your life. Don't I have you? You are my knight. No one can even think of harming me." And firmly said, "I'm not that powerful. It's better to be safe than sorry. His Majesty will definitely not let you out. Don't look at me like that. I won't sneak out with you again." Tang Zheng mercilessly refused. And pouted and said unhappily, "Why is there no sentiment at all? Annoying. Sister Mu, let's talk about business. Today we will continue to receive the corresponding industries. Although there are people stirring up trouble, we cannot panic." Tang Zheng did not pay attention to Anne and said directly to Mu Hongyan. Mu Hongyan looked deeply at him and said, "I can take care of these things by myself. No, this time the enemy is in the dark and we are in the light. I'm worried that they won't play by the rules and will harm you." Tang Zheng insisted. "Is it that exaggerated? Isn't this just a business operation?" Mu Hongyan disagreed. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. "It's not as simple as you think." He suspected that the real culprit who tried to assassinate Anne yesterday was related to the person who intercepted the goods. Because these two matters were too strange. However, this was only a guess and there was no way to prove it. Mu Hongyan saw that he was so insistent and could not say anything more. She had no choice but to nod in agreement. "Then take me with you." And begged. "Will His Majesty allow it? Moreover, haven't you always been clamoring for Tian Chanzi to give you pointers in your cultivation? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In the future, if he slips away again, you won't be able to find him even if you want to." Tang Zheng said. He and Tian Chanzi took the crystal. If and when to ask Tian Chanzi for advice at this time, he would definitely give her pointers without reservation. It was a kind of compensation. Really? Although Anne was a bit unhappy, she was still very interested in cultivation. Her attention was immediately diverted. "Of course, if he doesn't give you pointers with all his heart, I will find him and help you vent your anger. Okay, I'll go now." And happily left. Mu Hongyan looked meaningfully at Tang Zheng. Her lips curled into a smile and said, "You really know how to coax girls." "I'm doing this for her own good." "How is this coaxing?" I don't know how many women will fall into this big net you weave." Mu Hongyan sighed. Tang Zheng deliberately pretended not to hear and said, "Let's go take care of business." Mu Hongyan did not pursue the matter and let him go for the time being. The two of them went to find Bruce. He was the most knowledgeable about business matters, so naturally he was there. Bruce was standing in front of the king's door. His face was deathly pale. From behind the door came the king's angry voice. Tang Zheng's heart moved. The king must know about the disappearance of the crystal. But he still asked, "Bruce, what happened?" Bruce's face tightened as he said, "Nothing. The matter of the crystal was top secret." How could he tell Tang Zheng? "Oh, that's good. Today we still have to go out. I wonder if it's convenient for you?" Bruce hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll go report to His Majesty and then make a decision." "Okay." Bruce pushed open the door and walked in. Tang Zheng vaguely saw several people in white coats. There were also several guards guarding the laboratory. "What happened?" Mu Hongyan curiously asked. Tang Zheng shook his head. He pretended to be at a loss and said, "I don't know. His Majesty the King has always been gentle and refined. He is very gentlemanly. I've never seen him so angry." Mu Hongyan curiously said. Tang Zheng faintly smiled. Of course the king would be angry. The crystal went missing under the palace's layers of protection. This was indeed a serious matter. If this could happen, then wouldn't it mean that he could be killed in his sleep without anyone knowing? The so-called gentlemanly demeanor would naturally disappear under this kind of fatal threat. The king's face flushed red. The bridge of his nose was bright red. He angrily roared, "If you don't know what happened, then how did you protect it? Can something disappear for no reason?" Everyone trembled in fear. The guards guiltily explained, "Your Majesty, we guarded it closely. If someone really stole the crystal, it would be impossible for them to escape our eyes." "That is the truth. Did I wrongly accuse you?" the king angrily asked. The guards all lowered their heads. This was something that could not be explained by science. Chapter 926. After listening to Bruce's words, the king's anger subsided a little and he said, "Then you go. Remember, if someone is causing trouble, it must not be simple. Find out who is behind this." "Yes, your subordinate understands." Bruce took the order and left. The king looked at Tang Zheng from a distance through the crack in the door and muttered to himself, "There are several royal families in other countries who have long known that I have crystals, and they have been coveting this thing for a long time. Could it be that they are behind this? But their methods are too clever. They did not leave any traces, which is not their style. Your Majesty, this is simply a godlike method. We really can't figure out where we lost," the guard said with annoyance. The king snorted heavily, "Since you don't know where we lost, then investigate and find out the reason." "Yes." The guard retreated as if he had been pardoned, leaving only a few scientists in white coats. The king sat back heavily in his chair and said, "Has your research made no progress?" The scientists in white coats lowered their heads in shame. "Your Majesty, we have tried our best. We have tried many methods, even using lasers, but there was no way to open the crystals. We tried every means to get 2 of them, and we have already given them to your Majesty." The king subconsciously recalled the scene when Tang Jiu got the crystals. There was no doubt that crystals were very important to cultivators. These crystals were also very important to the royal family. If there was a way to collect the energy in the crystals, then the level of technology would definitely be a qualitative leap. However, all of this did not succeed. Why can cultivators absorb the energy in the crystals? I should have asked and to try it earlier. He regretted it. In fact, he invited Tian Chanzi to come to Sweden because he had a lot of selfish motives. Ever since he knew that Tang Jing got rid of Nicholas and pulled down the sword of Damocles that had been hanging over their heads for hundreds of years, the king was very fond of the means of cultivators. And was too weak to explain the essence of cultivators, so he wanted to use Tian Chanzi's means to turn the elites of the Swedish royal family into cultivators. In this way the country would definitely rise rapidly, and the royal families of European countries would not be his opponents. In the future, it would be easy to fight against the Rothschild family. This was killing many birds with one stone. However, before he could express his intentions to the Heaven Monk, a series of unimaginable events happened one after another, causing him to be unable to take it all in. He actually did not have the time to talk to the Heaven Monk alone. "Then is there any news about the unknown creature in the crystal?" the king asked, unwilling to give up. The white coats all shook their heads. "We've looked through all the literature, but we've never seen such a creature. This is an extraterrestrial creature. We don't have any relevant information." The king was getting angrier and angrier. He waved his hand to dismiss the crowd and summoned Baser. Baser walked over with large strides, the smell of iron and blood coming from his body. The king frowned and asked, "Do you have any leads on the mole?" "Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. I've found out who the mole is." After torture and interrogation he finally confessed. They are indeed not from the Rothschild family, but as for who is supporting them, his rank is too low to know. Wuxia has an old saying that one will not cry until they see the coffin. He did not tell the complete truth, the king said seriously. Your Majesty is wise, but this person is already dead. He knew that there was no hope for him to live, so he hurriedly explained some things and committed suicide, Bezer said regretfully. Damn, he actually committed suicide. The king was very angry. His royal guards were infiltrated by the enemy. Thinking about it made his back shiver. If he was suddenly shot, he would die without a doubt. Then is there any news about the escaped enemy? The king asked. There is no news for now. Bezer saw that the king's face was not good, so he quickly added, but we have a clue. The microbombs implanted in the brain are very rare, and there is only one seller on the international weapons black market. I have sent people to investigate and there will be news soon. The king's face finally turned slightly better, and he urged, find the mastermind behind the scenes as soon as possible. Tang Jing, Mu Hongyan, Bruce and a driver drove to the destination. The streets on both sides of the road quickly passed by, and a weak wind blew. Suddenly Tang Jing's ears slightly trembled and he shouted, hide! He kicked open the car door, carried Mu Hongyan and jumped out of the speeding car. Boom! With a loud bang, the car exploded and turned into a ball of flames. Tang Jing tightly held Mu Hongyan and asked, Sister Mu Hongyan, how are you? I'm fine. Mu Hongyan's heart tightened and she was scared. If she did not have Tang Jing with her today, she would not have been able to escape this disaster. Looking at the burning wreckage of the car, she could imagine what would have been waiting for her. On the other side, Bruce's face was bruised and swollen, and he struggled to get up from the ground. At the critical moment he risked his life and finally jumped out of the car. He was ruthlessly thrown to the ground and his old bones almost fell apart. But the driver was not so lucky, and he was buried in the explosion with the car. Tang Jing was furious. This was a woman who wanted to kill him, and no matter who it was, he would not let them go. He raised his eyes and looked around, vigilant of the rockets or bullets that could fly at any time. However, after waiting for a long time, there was nothing, only the screams of passers-by, and the sound of sirens could be heard in the distance. Damn it, they are so smart they ran away when they couldn't hit the target. Tang Jing fiercely stamped his foot, and a large piece of the flagstone on the ground shattered. Bruce ran over in a panic and said, what should we do now? Find the mastermind behind this and let them pay a painful price. Tang Jing clenched his fists and said while gnashing his teeth. Bruce's heart trembled, he had never seen Tang Jing so angry, and he knew that things were going to be bad. Even Nicholas had fallen into his hands. Who was the one who didn't have eyes and actually dared to provoke him? Who has the best intelligence in Europe? Tang Jing was a foreign monk, and he was ready to find the local snake to find out. There are many countries in Europe, and each country has its own intelligence system. We also have. Before he finished, he was rudely interrupted by Tang Jing, but your intelligence system is obviously useless. This kind of violent attack has happened in your country time and time again, and you have no clue at all. Facing Tang Jing's accusation, Bruce was speechless. Looking at his eyes that were about to spit fire, Bruce hesitated and said, actually, the Rothschild family is the most well-informed. Alex's family? Yes, they have existed in Europe for centuries. Moreover, they have spanned across the entire continent. This is something that a single country cannot compare to. Their intelligence system was established a few centuries ago. Now, it has become an indescribably huge net. Even the slightest movement of grass in the wind cannot escape their eyes. Bruce said somewhat bitterly. As a member of the royal family, he had to admit that an outsider's intelligence system was more perfect than their country's. This was a slap to his own face. Tang Jing secretly nodded. Bruce was right. It seemed that he had to meet the Rothschild family. Let's go to Alex's castle. Tang Jing pulled Mu Hongyan and turned around to leave. Bruce was extremely anxious and quickly caught up. Young Master Tang, young Master Alex has a grudge against you. If you go and beg him, he may not agree. Tang Jing smiled coldly. Who said I'm going to beg him? Bruce was suddenly startled and exclaimed, you want to use force. That depends on whether he cooperates or not. Tang Jing said meaningfully. Bruce pulled a long face and lamented in his heart, this is getting bigger and bigger. If the Rothschild family is really involved, then the royal family will be attacked from both sides. Just thinking about it makes him tremble with fear. Tang Jing pulled Mu Hongyan and walked very quickly. Not long after, Bruce was left behind without a trace. The two arrived in front of the castle. The door was tightly shut. Mu Hongyan looked at the classical and magnificent castle and said, "If I had a castle like this, I would be satisfied." "I'll give you a ride," Tang Jing said. "You don't have a castle?" Mu Hongyan laughed involuntarily. "I don't, but the Rockefeller family's property definitely has a castle." Mu Hongyan recalled the information she had read. It was indeed so. She excitedly nodded, "Good. But this castle is very good." "You like this castle? Then let's buy it. This belongs to Alex's family. His family doesn't lack money. Why would they sell it?" Mu Hongyan shook her head and said in disbelief. Seeing that she really liked this castle, Tang Zheng's heart moved. He domineeringly said, "My woman, even if she likes the stars in the sky, I will find a way to pluck them and give them to her. It's just a castle, what's impossible about it?" Mu Hongyan's eyes lit up. At this moment she felt that no words of love in the world were better than these words. Although she was past the age of dreaming, these words inadvertently hit the softest part of her heart. She held on to Tang Zheng's hand even tighter. "No wonder so many women are like moths to a flame. It's because your flame is too hot," Mu Hongyan sincerely said. Creak. A small window next to the door suddenly opened. A person appeared and asked the two who they were looking for. "Alex." When the other side heard this name, his expression turned cold. He asked, "Do you two have an appointment?" "No." "Sorry, without an appointment, our young master will not receive guests." "Pretentious." Tang Jing lightly said these two words. With a tap of his foot, he soared into the air and lightly took a step in the air. Ping pong. He and Mu Hongyan landed in the courtyard. The guards at the gate were dumbstruck. They watched the two of them stride into the castle, not knowing what to do. A group of people suddenly rushed out of the castle. They looked at the two of them with vigilance and loudly shouted for them to stop. The two of them turned a deaf ear to them and continued forward. Immediately these people rushed towards the two of them. Their attacks were layered and had a tacit understanding. However, their strength could not compare to Tang Zheng's. They were like ants trying to shake a big tree. They were all sent flying in all directions. The battle had ended before it even started. This scene was clearly seen by Alex, who was standing at the window on the second floor. Chapter 927. Alex had already inquired about the situation when Princess Anne was attacked yesterday. When he found out about Tang Zheng's heroic actions, he was still a little indignant, thinking that those mercenaries were too weak, so he took advantage of them. He wished that he was the one accompanying Anne at that time, so that the role of the hero saving the beauty would fall on his head. But at this moment, seeing Tang Zheng's skill, his heart couldn't help but beat wildly. This skill was almost on par with the Holy Knight at home. No, how can he be compared to the Holy Knight? He hurriedly shook his head, denying this absurd idea. But he didn't know that Tang Zheng had only displayed a portion of his strength to deal with his guards. Tang Zheng felt something and looked up, coincidentally meeting Alex's eyes. Alex subconsciously took a step back. This was because Tang Zheng's eyes were so sharp that even though they were separated by a window, they were still like a sharp sword. "Let's go. Let's go up and meet Alex." Tang Zheng held Mu Hongyan's hand and walked in with large strides. Meeting Alex at the stairs, Alex didn't run away in a panic. This was his castle. If he ran away, then people would laugh their heads off. "You have guts, actually daring to break into my house," Alex said with a gloomy face. But his eyes were fixed on Tang Zheng and Mu Hongyan's hands that were held together, and he shouted, "I knew I wasn't wrong. That night it was the two of you, right? You lied to Anne." Mu Hongyan heard this and wanted to withdraw her hand, but Tang Zheng held on tightly. Since Alex had already broken through once, then he wasn't afraid of a second time. "If you tell Anne, will she believe you?" Tang Zheng asked indifferently. "You." Alex's white cheeks immediately swelled red. "You lied to her. One day she will see through your true colors." "Do you really like Anne that much?" Tang Zheng asked. "Of course. I've liked her since I was a teenager. I swore that I would definitely pursue her. I've already defeated many opponents, but I didn't expect that you would appear out of nowhere." Alex felt wronged. "What if I tell you that I have no feelings for Anne at all?" Tang Zheng asked. These were his heartfelt words. He already had enough women by his side. Although Anne was outstanding and had a noble status, he really didn't have any improper thoughts about her. Otherwise, with his charm and methods, he would have conquered Princess Anne's body and mind. "What? No idea?" Alex looked as if he had seen a ghost. No one had ever said such a thing. From the elderly to the children, everyone admired Princess Anne. This person actually said that he didn't have any feelings for her. Was he a fool? He didn't believe it. He sneered and said, "Do Do you think I'll let my guard down and let you take advantage of this situation? Tang Zheng was slightly stunned. He laughed involuntarily. I don't care whether you believe it or not. I'm just stating my thoughts. I didn't come to Europe to fight with you for Anne. I'm not your enemy. But if you really treat me as an enemy, the one who will suffer in the end will definitely be you, not me. Haha, what a joke. This is Europe. Do you think it's that ancient and backward, Wuxia? Alex laughed disdainfully. Tang Jing shook his head. He turned to Mu Hongyan and said, some people are just stubborn. When I talk to him nicely, he thinks that I'm weak. It's really troublesome. Looking at his playful appearance, Mu Hongyan couldn't help but laugh. She played along and asked, then what should we do? That's why martial arts are very useful in many situations. Because it's more direct and doesn't need to waste time. After Tang Jing finished speaking, he grabbed with his hand and used the sky swallowing technique. A powerful suction force gushed out from his palm. Alex screamed, what are you doing? Then he was forced to fly towards Tang Jing and was firmly caught by him. Although Alex was a member of the Rothschild family, he didn't practice any profound martial arts. He only knew some basic martial arts. How could he be compared to Tang Jing? But he was quite knowledgeable. Looking at Tang Jing's move, he was really shocked. Because even a holy knight didn't have this kind of ability. Witchcraft, this is definitely witchcraft. He roared. Tang Jing laughed. Who said it was witchcraft? If it's not witchcraft, then what is it? I think you're really a frog at the bottom of a well. I even suspect that you're a member of the Rothschild family. Louis of the Rockefeller family knows much more than you. Tang Jing shook his head and sighed. Alex was stunned. He asked, you know that despicable person Louis? Oh, you also think he's a despicable person? Of course he's the best at playing tricks. He's made me suffer quite a few times. Alex said bitterly. With your methods you'll only be at a disadvantage in front of him. Tang Jing nodded in agreement. What do you mean? No, how do you know Louis? Are you in cahoots with him? You should know that Louis is dead, right? Of course, I heard that he was killed by someone. It's really satisfying. If I meet this hero, I'll definitely thank him for his gentlemanly actions. Alex said. Ha ha ha. Tang Jing finally couldn't help but laugh. What are you laughing at? Alex was confused. Don't laugh. Thank you for your praise. I can reluctantly accept the title of hero. Tang Jing said enigmatically. Alex's eyes rolled a few times. He seemed to be thinking about the meaning of Tang Jing's words. After a while, he reacted and looked at Tang Jing in disbelief. You're saying you killed Bruce? Tang Jing smiled and nodded. Alex was about to tell him to stop bragging, but seeing Tang Jing's reaction, he swallowed his words back. Because he was sure that the other party didn't seem to be bragging. Then his background was too big. He actually dared to kill Louis. Who exactly are you? Alex asked, still in shock. A Wuxia person. Nonsense, when did Wuxia people have such guts? That's Louis. You killed him. Would the Rockefeller family let you go? Alex retorted with a look of disbelief. Who said they let me go? Nicholas personally brought people to kill me. Tang Jing calmly said. Alex's eyes almost popped out. His heart jumped to his throat. He took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in his heart. Liar. Nicholas wants to kill you. How can you stand in front of me in one piece? You've already died who knows how many times. Tang Jing secretly sighed. Nicholas's name was indeed big in Europe. Even Alex was afraid of him. Why don't you believe me when I tell you the truth? How can I believe your lies? I'm not a fool. Alex said with a look of self-confidence. Who said you're not a fool? You don't even believe the truth. If you're not a fool, then what are you? When Alex heard this, his cheeks turned red. His eyes were about to spit fire. Tang Jing ignored his anger and said, Nicholas came to kill me, but in the end he also died in my hands. Impossible. Impossible. Alex shook his head like a rattle drum, firmly denying it. What's impossible? How could you possibly kill Nikolai? That year, the 12 holy knights joined hands to resist him. Alex's worldview was about to collapse. The 12 holy knights were already very powerful in his heart. But without a doubt, Nicholas was even more powerful. Now that Tang Jing said that Nicholas died in his hands, even if Alex was a little brainless, he still thought that it was impossible. Don't you know that Nicholas is already dead? Of course I know. But it said that he died of a serious illness. Died of a serious illness? Are vampires afraid of getting sick? Tang Jing laughed involuntarily. Alex's cheeks turned red. He understood vampires. It was said that they were immortal. How could they be afraid of getting sick? Could it be that Nicholas was really killed by him? Alex couldn't help but think, but he still couldn't accept this fact. Doesn't that mean he's more powerful than the 12 Holy Knights combined? Alex previously thought that Tang Jing couldn't compare to the Holy Knights, but now it seemed that he was much more powerful than the Holy Knights. Alex's expression kept changing. He looked at Tang Jing with a complicated expression. The faint smile on Tang Jing's face suddenly became unfathomable. He took a deep breath and said, "You caught me. Could it be that you want to kill me? The Rockefeller family is Rothschild's enemy. I helped you get rid of your enemy. Shouldn't you express your gratitude?" Tang Jing asked. Alex said, "Logically speaking, I should thank you. But you deceived Anne. Don't expect me to thank you. It seems that you are really infatuated with Anne." "Of course." Alex raised his head proudly. Tang Jing shook his head. "It's not that I want to discourage you. Although I don't have any thoughts about Anne, she has no thoughts about you. What's the use of you being so passionate? My sincerity will always move her." Alex was full of confidence. "I didn't come to you today to talk about these romantic matters. Your Rothschild family's intelligence is said to be the best in Europe, right?" Alex wasn't an idiot. He knew what she was trying to say and said, "You want to ask for information from my family. You're not too stupid." "Who said I'm stupid?" Alex was furious. He looked down at the hand that grabbed him and sneered. "You have a request, but you treat me like this. Do you think I will give you information? This is because you don't cooperate." Tang Jing let go of his hand. Alex tidied up his clothes and said, "Based on what you did to Anne, I won't cooperate with you." "Is that so? I didn't come to you to beg you. If you don't cooperate, I'm afraid you will suffer a lot. Moreover, I don't think you know the information, so take me to see your family." "You dare to go to my family? Why wouldn't I dare?" Tang Jing shrugged. "Nicholas made your family suffer a lot. I don't think I'm weaker than Nicholas." Chapter 928. Who said I want to be your family's enemy? If you capture me and interrogate me for information, won't that make you my family's enemy? Alex retorted. "Can you represent your family?" "Of course." Alex answered with a guilty conscience. Tang Jing declined to comment as he lightly smiled and said, "Bring me to your clan. There are no conditions to be discussed." Finished speaking, he grabbed Alex with his big hand. Alex screamed, but there was nothing he could do. "Go." Tang Jing gave a low shout and walked out of the castle with large strides. The other guards wanted to stop him, but they could not get up. They could only watch as Tang Jing grabbed their family's young master and left. Mu Hongyan's eyes were full of splendor. She was not afraid but rather excited. "Young Master Tang, please show mercy." Bruce finally rushed over anxiously and stood in front of the three of them. "Young Master Tang, don't act recklessly." Seeing Tang Jing grab Alex's collar, Bruce earnestly advised. "I'm not being reckless. But this?" Bruce's face was ugly as he pointed at Tang Jing's hand. "I'm asking him to cooperate with me and take me to visit the Rothschild family." "What, you want to visit the Rothschild family?" Bruce turned pale with fright. Even His Majesty the King would not easily get involved with the Rothschild family, because the other party was too mysterious. Putting himself in danger was not a wise move. "Absolutely not." Bruce hurriedly used his body to block them and desperately shook his head. "Young Master Tang, listen to my advice. The Rothschild family is not an ordinary place. You absolutely cannot put yourself in danger." Tang Jing was anxious to know the real culprit behind the scenes and said firmly, "I won't go. Do you have a way to get them to tell me the information?" "I don't have that much power. But His Majesty can coordinate," Bruce said. Tang Jing laughed secretly. His Majesty was already in a terrible fix because of the disappearance of the crystals. How could he have the time to think about these things? In the king's mind, the matter of the crystals was obviously more important than this matter. "Bruce, go back and tell His Majesty that I'll be back soon. Don't worry. If I really don't come back, ask Tian Chanzi to come and find me." Tang Jing's tone was relaxed as if he was traveling. This made Alex want to vomit blood. Even the royal family was afraid of his family, but in Tang Jing's eyes, his family was like a tourist attraction. He could enter and leave as he pleased. Tang Jing did not take it seriously at all. He made up his mind and said, "Since you look down on my clan so much, I'll take you there. However, don't run away when the time comes." "Do you think I'll run away?" Tang Jing asked with a smile. Alex was not sure. Thinking of what Tang Jing had done to Louis and Nicholas, he felt even more guilty. Well, since you've thought it through, then lead the way. Don't play tricks or you'll be the one to suffer, Tang Jing warned. Alex snorted and did not comment. He strode toward the parking lot and said, "If you have the guts, then get in the car with me." Tang Jing and Mu Hongyan did not hesitate to follow. Bruce was in a dilemma. He could not follow, but it seemed inappropriate not to follow. He was burning with anxiety. He angrily stomped his foot, turned around and walked away. He said to himself, "I must report to His Majesty immediately. Young Master Tang is too reckless. If he really has a conflict with the Rothschild family, it will be terrible." Alex drove and the group of people rushed to their destination. The Rothschild family was not in Sweden. They had to cross the country's border and go north. After 2 days of unimpeded driving, they entered another small country. This small country was just a small dot on the map. It might not even be as big as a prefecture-level city in Wuxia. It was full of green, making people feel relaxed and happy. "My family is about to arrive. It's not too late to back out now," Alex said bitterly. In these 2 days they had only taken a short rest. The rest of the time Alex was driving. His mind and body had suffered a great deal. His eyes were bloodshot. He occasionally wanted to crash into a tree next to him. He wanted to destroy the car and perish together with the other party. "Concentrate on driving. You don't need to worry about anything else," Tang Jing said lightly. This kind of long journey was a piece of cake for him. Even Mu Hongyan did not feel tired. She had tasted the taste of cultivation for the first time. Along the way, she was carefully comprehending the mysteries of cultivation. A majestic castle gradually appeared, and only when it was close enough did they get a full view of it. Compared to the previous castle, it was like the difference between an eagle and a chick. This castle was too magnificent. Although it could not be compared with the imperial city in Wuxia, it was definitely second to none in Europe. It was the largest and most magnificent castle. Just by looking at it from afar, a sense of grandeur and the vicissitudes of history hit them in the face. Mu Hongyan's eyes widened in surprise. The Rothschild family's heritage is really extraordinary. Alex raised his head high. His bloodshot eyes were full of pride. Suddenly, Tang Jing felt danger lurking on both sides of the road. He remained calm and said without even looking, "Your family has so many people lying in ambush on both sides of the road. What's the use?" Alex's eyelids twitched. Tang Jing did not even look, but he actually found the people lurking in the dark. He was too amazing. In the face of Tang Jing's ridicule, Alex immediately retorted, "Nonsense. Whether it's nonsense or not, you'll see in a moment." As soon as he finished speaking, a white horse rushed out of the castle. This seemed to be a signal. Following closely behind, 11 white horses rushed out like a wisp of smoke. These 12 horses had pure white hair without a trace of impurities. They were like the champions of a horse beauty contest. The 12 people on the horses were all wearing thick armor and helmets with a metallic luster on their heads. Their faces could not be seen clearly, but without exception, they all had imposing appearances. Screech. The car suddenly braked, leaving a long tire mark on the ground. Alex almost hit his head on the steering wheel. His eyes were round as he stared at the 12 horsemen coming towards him as if he had seen a ghost. The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely and said, "The 12 holy knights are all out." Ever since the defeat of the Rockefeller family, the 12 holy knights had disappeared. Even if there was a real threat, there had never been a situation where the 12 holy knights were all out. This time the 12 holy knights were all out. How could Alex not be shocked? He subconsciously turned his head to look at Tang Jing. His lips opened and closed, but not a single word came out. Alex understood very well that since the family had sent out the 12 holy knights, it naturally meant that they already knew that Tang Jing had the corresponding strength. In other words, what Tang Jing said was true. Louis and Nicholas had died at his hands. Tang Jing stared fixedly at the 12 holy knights and said with interest, "Your family is smarter than you. They didn't send 1 or 2 holy knights to deal with me. Instead they sent out all of them." Tang Jing opened the door and got out, standing in front of the car. Mu Hongyan also wanted to get out, but she was stopped by Tang Jing with a wave of his hand. "You just watch from the car. No one can cross this line and hurt you." Mu Hongyan's eyes were full of spirit. The corner of her mouth hooked up into a faint smile as she stayed in the car as she was told. She took the lead with the others half a step behind. The 12 holy knights stopped at the same time, as if they had been trained countless times. Tang Jing stood steadily in the same place, raising his head to look at the 12 holy knights. "I know your intentions. You definitely want to fight, so I won't say much. Let's talk after the fight." Tang Jing seemed to be deep in thought. Since the Rothschild family didn't come out and let the 12 holy knights come out together, it was naturally to further test his strength. Tang Jing held War Soul in his hand and walked towards the other party step by step. He strolled leisurely as if this wasn't a battlefield but a park. The holy knight in the lead raised his sword. The wide and thick heavy sword shone coldly under the sunlight. Even under the scorching sun, it made people feel a soul-stirring murderous aura. The heavy sword, the armor, and the fierce horse formed a strange scenery under the sunlight. The holy knight in the lead raised the heavy sword in his hand and aimed it at Tang Jing. With a shake of the reins, he charged forward as fast as lightning. At the same time, the other holy knights also charged together. Their heavy swords were all aimed at Tang Jing. Tang Jing suddenly accelerated like a gust of wind. This time he chose to meet force with force. Puff puff puff. The 12 holy knights arrived one after another, layer upon layer, and slashed at Tang Jing, who was on the ground. However, Tang Jing disappeared. They looked up in shock and found that he had actually flown above their heads and slashed down with War Soul. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. 12 rays of sword light fell from the sky, as if the sunlight was split apart by these 12 rays of sword light. Bang bang bang. 12 crisp sounds rang out. All the heavy swords were hit by these rays of sword light. 12 cracks appeared, then turned into 24, 36. And finally there were more and more. Pa pa pa. The 12 holy knights shattered into pieces one after another. The holy knight looked at the heavy sword in his hand dumbfoundedly. He was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out from behind his helmet. With just one move, victory and defeat were decided. They never thought that someone could achieve this kind of power. They looked at the thin figure in shock, and the sword in his hand that was suffused with light. Their heroic spirit could not help but disappear. Tang Jing was also surprised at his own fighting strength. Yuanying realm was indeed extraordinary. An endless stream of true qi filled his body and mind, and then merged into War Soul. It was also the heaven-flying immortal sword technique, but its power was much higher than before. His fighting spirit was high, his eyes lit up, and he was ready to completely destroy the opponent's arrogance in one go. Thus he floated in the air and raised War Soul once again. Suddenly, a strange yet familiar thought entered his mind. His arms subconsciously waved and War Soul fell. Mighty, completely different sword qi slashed down with an earth-shattering force. Tai Chi Yin Yang sword technique. The Tai Chi Yin Yang sword technique that he had completely forgotten suddenly appeared out of thin air. Chapter 929. Tang Jing had only learned 2 moves of the Tai Chi Yin Yang sword technique, and this time he was using the first move. Although he was shocked, the War Soul sword had already slashed down. Peng peng peng. With a series of explosions, the 12 holy knights fell from their horses and fell to the ground. Their heavy armor was scattered and turned into pieces. They revealed their true appearance. Except for the leader, who was an old man, the others were all young men. Tang Jing was stunned. Except for the old man, the other holy knights were definitely not the ones who had attacked the Rockefeller family. Perhaps they were their descendants. These people climbed up from the ground in a sorry state and looked at Tang Jing with a pale face. They were in a dilemma. If they fought, they would definitely not win. If they fled, that would be too shameful. Tang Jing ignored them. He turned his head and walked towards the car door, reaching out his hand. He said, "Sister Mu, come down. The outcome has been decided." Mu Hongyan happily got off the car as if she had won the battle. She looked at him passionately. If there were not so many people, she would have given him a kiss. Alex lay on the ground on the steering wheel and hit the horn hard, making an ear-piercing sound. He kept growling, "Impossible. This is not real." 8. Although he was mentally prepared, he did not expect the 12 holy knights to be defeated so easily. Tang Jing held Mu Hongyan and walked in front of the holy knights. The old man suddenly asked, "This is Wuxia's magic? You are more knowledgeable than Alex." Tang Jing nodded. "It is indeed powerful." The old man praised from the bottom of his heart. His eyes kept changing and finally sighed, "You are a guest. Please come this way, the family head has been waiting for a long time." Tang Jing understood in his heart, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This was the same as his judgment. The 12 holy knights were testing his skills. If he was not the same as the rumors, then there was naturally no need to talk. He had proven his strength, so he was qualified to sit down and talk. He was not angry. Instead, he nodded slightly in agreement. Under the gazes of the holy knights, he followed the old man into the castle. A middle-aged man stood at the entrance to welcome them. He was the current head of the Rothschild family, Alex's father, Abraham. Abraham was tall and had a sharp gaze. There were a few wrinkles on his forehead, which made him look very dignified. Abraham saw the battle just now. His greatest reliance had been defeated so easily. One could imagine the storm in his heart. However, he did not panic. According to the information he received, the other party was not an enemy. They were here for information. Moreover, the King of Sweden's personal call had dispelled a lot of the hostility in his heart, but it was also reasonable to test Tang Jing's strength. Of course, he knew Tang Jing better than many people and knew that the Rockefeller family had actually fallen into his hands. Of course, he would not repeat the mistakes of the Rockefeller family. Only cooperation could lead to a win-win situation. This was his strategy. He first extended his hand, took a step forward, and shook hands with Tang Jing. Tang Jing was relieved. This was the same as what he had expected. This was a smart person. Not everyone in the world was an enemy. If a person really became the enemy of the whole world, no matter how strong they were, it would be difficult to escape the fate of being eliminated. He was beyond the reach of Europe and even the Atlantic Empire. He needed such a strong and smart partner. "Welcome," Abraham said briefly and powerfully. "Thank you." Tang Jing nodded and said directly, "I need information." Abraham waved to his attendant, who came over with an exquisite gilded plate with a piece of paper on it. "The information you want is here." Tang Jing nodded approvingly. This was a smart person. It was easy to deal with smart people. Tang Jing opened the paper and immediately frowned. There was a long list of names on it. There was more than one, and they were all familiar names. He had seen these people before. "It's them?" "Yes, they were the ones who assassinated Princess Anne and attacked you in business," Abraham said in an absolute tone. No one doubted the truth of his words. "So that's how it is." Tang Jing suddenly realized. He gradually understood why these people were so deranged. These people were actually the European royal families who had cooperated with Tang Jing. At that time, when they heard the news of Tang Jing's death, they abandoned the spirit of the contract and tore up the cooperation contract. Now that he had overthrown the Rockefeller family and was coming in strong, they wanted to cut him off and frame the Rothschild family. They wanted Tang Jing to become enemies with this family and then profit from it. It was really a good plan. They even led the flames of war to my family. Naturally, I will not stay out of it, Abraham said calmly, but the anger hidden in his words was very strong. "Then what are you going to do? Let them know what the Rothschild family relied on to stand for hundreds of years on this continent," Abraham said confidently. "Then what am I going to do? Please wait and see. This is a greeting gift for a distinguished guest who has come from afar. This greeting gift is not light. Then I will wait and see." Tang Jing did not decline pretentiously. "From now on, I will protect your interests on this continent. Absolutely no one will dare to touch it." Abraham continued to express his attitude. Tang Jing's eyes slightly narrowed. The conditions provided by Abraham were so good that it was beyond his expectations. "What are your conditions?" Tang Jing asked. "There are no conditions because the Rothschild family wants to be true friends with you," Abraham said sincerely. Alex caught up and just happened to hear this sentence. His mouth was wide open as he looked in disbelief at his father's humble attitude. "I like to make friends the most. I have always been good to my friends. My enemies don't like this very much," Tang Jing said. Abraham said firmly, "The Rothschild family will never be your enemy. Then we will take our leave." Abraham still wanted to urge him to stay, but in the end he resisted. If he wanted to further communicate with Tang Jing and even become true friends, his next move was the key. Only by making Tang Jing satisfied could their friendship be maintained. "I will send you off." "No need." Tang Jing threw the War Soul sword into the air, and the War Soul sword floated steadily in the air. He held Mu Hongyan's hand and leaped onto the sword. So, War Soul turned into a sword light and disappeared without a trace. This kind of ghostly method caused the minds of the people present to go blank. After a long while, they finally retracted their gazes from the direction where War Soul disappeared. Alex was originally questioning him, but he could not say a single word. His head hung low as if it was about to fall into the dust. The 12 paladins were even more dejected and sighed. They had always boasted of being strong, but now they realized how weak they were. Abraham became even more determined in his thoughts and muttered to himself, "The ancestors of the family once warned us that we must never set foot in the mysterious eastern Wuxia. After so many years, many people have long forgotten this admonition. Rockefeller practiced this admonition and finally made many people remember this iron law again. In ancient times, Wuxia was worthy of being called the center of the world. All countries worshipped it, but in the past few hundred years, the country's strength had become weaker and weaker. It was even bullied by the powers, making people forget that it was a dragon that had been sleeping. Abraham knew that the dragon was finally about to wake up. The iron law of the ancestors was indeed correct. If they cooperated with this dragon, the Rothschild family would be able to reach a higher level. If they were to become enemies, they would definitely be destroyed. The Rockefeller family was the best proof. Alex, from now on, you are not allowed to pursue Princess Anne. Abraham's gaze turned and he gave his son an unquestionable order. Alex raised his head and asked indignantly, why? Tang Zheng has already made it clear that he is not interested in Anne. But Anne is interested in him. Can't I pursue my own happiness? Alex was furious. Your happiness is not with Anne. Besides, after so many years, can't you recognize reality? Alex was speechless. Abraham ignored his son's grievances and said to the head of the paladins, action. The old man nodded and understood tacitly. Tang Zheng returned to the Swedish palace and suffered a lot of complaints from Princess Anne. Fortunately, His Majesty the King summoned him and he was able to escape from Anne's nagging. His Majesty the King and Tang Zheng had a secret discussion for a long time. When he heard the reaction of the Rothschild family, he was shocked. This old family finally put down their pride and took the initiative to show goodwill to Tang Zheng. This showed the importance of Tang Zheng. He couldn't help but feel a little moved. If Anne really came together with him, wouldn't it be a good thing? If the Rothschild family had this opportunity, they would definitely not let it go. Why should he let it go? Many of the marriages of the royal family members were for benefits. Although His Majesty the King felt sorry for Anne, since this was her wish, why not share the benefits with his daughter's happiness? It was a blessing to have the best of both worlds. Moreover, the mastermind behind the scenes this time was actually the royal family of those countries, which made him feel even more pressure. These countries had secretly formed an alliance. If he didn't firmly hold onto the big tree of Tang Zheng, then his future days would definitely be difficult. Of course, he also blamed the disappearance of the crystal on the heads of these royal families, and his hostility towards them increased greatly. Immediately, the way he looked at Tang Zheng gradually became thought-provoking. Tang Zheng didn't notice the king's strange behavior. When he returned to his room and chased after him and stared at him with wide eyes, she said angrily, "Do you know that you were wrong this time?" Tang Zheng didn't think much of it. "What did I do wrong? You didn't care about your own safety and put yourself in danger. If this isn't wrong, then what is?" And stared at him stubbornly. "I don't think there will be any danger. What if there is? That's the Rothschild family, an existence that all the royal families in Europe are very afraid of. Aren't I fine now? All in all, this time I was worried to death. I'm very angry." And pouted, no different from a young girl in love. Chapter 930. Liking a person is a happy thing, but if the falling flower is in love with the heartless brook, then it will be torturous. In these few days, Anne understood her own feelings and confirmed that she liked Tang Zheng. Especially when she heard that he was in danger, she wanted to fly over to help him. She pleaded with her father many times, and His Majesty was forced to call Abraham many times. Now that she finally saw him come back safe and sound, she had mixed feelings. She pouted and looked at him with hidden bitterness. "I was so worried about you. You didn't even coax me and went to see my father." And complained. Although Tang Zheng was not interested in her, but she was a princess and cared about him so much. If he treated her coldly, it would be unreasonable. "Thank you, Anne." Anne's eyes suddenly lit up like a light and said, "Then how do you want to thank me? How do you want to thank me?" Tang Zheng blinked his eyes with a headache. "Can't you tell that I am just being polite? How can you take advantage of me like this?" And raised her head. "My father doesn't want me to go to Wuxia. You go and persuade him. I want to go back to Wuxia." "Why do you want to go back? You don't want to go to school again?" "I don't care." And acted spoiled like a little girl in love. After all, she was only 19 years old and this was the first time she liked someone. Tang Zheng had a headache. She wanted to create an opportunity to get along with him. Wasn't this leading her astray? His Majesty has his own considerations. It is not good for me to interfere. Didn't you say that you want to thank me? You don't keep your promise at all. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry and explained, "This is your family's matter. It is not good for me to interfere. It is hard to leave your homeland. It is better for you to stay in your own country." "I don't want to do it. I have already stayed here for 19 years. I want to go to the outside world and explore it." However, if you stay here, I will not leave. Anne slyly said. I will not stay. Then I won't stay. And was extremely stubborn. The two of them stared at each other, unwilling to give in. In any case, this is my only request. Since you promised me, then you must fulfill it. Otherwise, I will hate you for the rest of my life. Is it that exaggerated? Of course, women hold grudges and I'm one of them. You're a princess. Shouldn't you be elegant and tolerant? This is the real me now, Anne said stubbornly. 2 days later, an explosive piece of news spread. The kings on the list had all changed hands and were forced to abdicate their thrones. This caused the world's politics to tremble like an earthquake. Everyone was stunned, not knowing what had happened. Tang Jing understood that this was the work of the Rothschild family. Although he did not know how they did it, it was clear that they had great influence to make so many kings change owners at once. Tang Jing couldn't help but rejoice. If he had insisted on going against the Rothschild family, although he wouldn't have failed, it would still be troublesome. He didn't have that much time to waste in Europe. All the obstacles disappeared. Mu Hongyan successfully took over the relevant industries, and Tang Jing became a world-class superpower. Of course, the people in the country definitely didn't know. Only a few people knew that Rockefeller's industries had fallen into the hands of Tang Jing. Tang Jing didn't continue to pursue the matter. After all, it was impossible for him to really kill all those treacherous kings. Since they had lost their thrones, they had lost their most precious things. Naturally, they couldn't make any big waves. He had won this conflict. This series of events made His Majesty look at Tang Jing in a new light, and he became more and more convinced of his idea. Mu Hongyan couldn't leave Europe for a while, but Tang Jing couldn't delay any longer. However, he didn't leave her alone. He transferred a few witch tribe warriors from the country to protect her. Only then did he leave with peace of mind. During this time, the king finally couldn't help but want to persuade Tian Chanzi to stay, but he was rejected without hesitation. The king originally wanted Tian Chanzi to teach the royal cultivation method, but he couldn't bring himself to say this request after being rejected so rudely. Because he knew that he would definitely be rejected even if he brought it up, why bother? Seeing that the two of them were about to leave, the connection with them would definitely weaken. He was unwilling to give up, and finally made up his mind to let and accompany them back to Wuxia. This suggestion was out of everyone's expectations, but Annie was so excited that she almost jumped 3 feet into the air. She looked at Tang Jing affectionately, mistakenly thinking that this was all because he was secretly pleading for her. The queen was quite dissatisfied with this decision, but after listening to the king's explanation, she could only choose to acquiesce. On the other hand, Tang Jing rolled his eyes helplessly. He thought to himself, Your Majesty, is there anyone who would throw their daughter away like this? It seems like she can't get married. Mu Hongyan secretly pulled Tang Jing to the side and teased him. As a woman, she knew Anne's thoughts too well. She wasn't too jealous. Ever since she chose to accept Tang Jing, she knew that all this was inevitable. She was the most open-minded of all the women. Perhaps it was related to her special experience that made her more mature and wise. With Tang Jing's cultivation, it was almost impossible to monopolize him. She also didn't dare to have such extravagant hopes. Tang Jing couldn't say anything, but he couldn't refuse Anne's infatuation. He thought to himself that he should just stay as far away from her as possible. However, when the two of them got on the plane, they realized how unrealistic this idea was, and was like a piece of candy sticking to him closely. As for Tian Chanzi, he automatically became a third wheel and stayed far away from her. They didn't take a private plane back, and went to Wuxia as an ordinary person. However, the first-class cabin was still booked by the rich and imposing imperial family to prevent others from disturbing them. And lay beside Tang Jing and said with a smile, You swore that you wouldn't persuade my father, but you actually did it secretly. You really know how to surprise people. Tang Jing rolled his eyes and said truthfully, I didn't persuade him. You're still quibbling now. Whatever, it's fine as long as I understand it in my heart. This time I don't need to go to Wuxia. I want to follow you every day and integrate into your life. And made up her mind. Our relationship is developing so fast? I wasn't sure before, but now I'm sure that I like you. There are also other people who are eyeing you covetously. Of course I can't let my guard down. And said with a set of words. Tang Jing shook his head and didn't say anything. Annie was determined to chase after him. This was something that would make many men elated, but he felt a great deal of pressure. This time when they went back, the others wouldn't be as easy to talk to as Mu Hongyan. He didn't know if it would lead to a war between these women. In such a big villa, he was afraid that there would be a fight every day. Just thinking about it made his heart tremble. And talked nonstop all the way, and Tang Zheng was a quiet listener. When the plane finally landed, he looked at the familiar sky of Beijing and let out a sigh of relief. The summer in Beijing was very hot, and people felt like they were being roasted by the sun. Some time ago, the storm in the imperial city had calmed down. Beijing was peaceful again, and people were rushing to make a living. After Tang Zheng and the other two returned to the villa, the girls were in high spirits, but the happiness didn't last long. Because Anne quietly moved her luggage from upstairs to the first floor next to Tang Zheng's. This action made everyone subconsciously stop what they were doing and look at her strangely. Seeing everyone looking at her, Anne calmly explained, "It's too tiring to climb up and down every day, so I live on the first floor." No one believed this lame excuse, and everyone looked at her and Tang Zheng a few more times. Tang Zheng looked down as if saying it had nothing to do with him. But the girls couldn't think that it had nothing to do with them, especially Fang Shishir and Yi Dingdang. During this period of time, the relationship between the two had advanced by leaps and bounds, as if they had formed some kind of alliance. They went out together and occasionally went shopping together. This was a situation that Tang Zheng had never expected. Yi Dingdang seemed to have changed into a different person, which made him puzzled. When Anne moved her luggage into the house, Tang Zheng was immediately surrounded by Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir. Wu and Lu Qingmei also wanted to surround him, but in the end they restrained themselves. "What's going on?" Yi Dingdang asked straightforwardly. Tang Zheng innocently said, "How would I know? If you don't know, then who should know?" Yi Dingdang asked, "You went to her country and then came back. She moved next door to you. Isn't that obvious?" Tang Zheng pretended to be at a loss and shook his head. "Didn't she say that she didn't want to climb up and down? Is this reason sufficient?" Fang Shishir finally couldn't help but ask. Although she tolerated Tang Zheng, she couldn't remain indifferent when she saw that and had signs of getting involved. It was a simple question. Tang Zheng really wanted to bite the bullet and say that it was sufficient, but in the end he didn't say it out loud. He bitterly smiled. "How would I know? Shishir, isn't it obvious? It must be because the two of them were alone abroad and sparks flew between them." Yi Dingdang's fiery personality was clearly displayed as she spoke without thinking. "Absolutely not." Tang Zheng hurriedly denied as he felt wronged. "It's clearly sophistry. Shishir, we can't spoil him like this. Otherwise, who knows what he'll do in the future. We must guard against him," Yi Dingdang said. Fang Shishir hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. "Shishir, why are you also like this?" Tang Zheng wanted to cry but had no tears. "Don't take your anger out on Shishir. This is your fault." Seeing Tang Zheng being besieged again and again, Lan Yu couldn't bear to watch any longer and said, "Maybe there's a misunderstanding. He's had a hard time, so let him rest first." Seeing Lan Yu say this, the two didn't pursue the matter any further. After all, they had to give their future mother-in-law face. Lan Yu kindly looked at Tang Zheng and said, "Little Zheng, you go rest first." Tang Zheng gratefully looked at her and hurriedly slipped back into his room. And tidied up and came out, but she didn't see Tang Zheng's figure. She was about to knock on the door when Yi Dingdang rushed to stop her and asked, "Just what is your relationship with him?" And smiled and said, "I like him, so I want to pursue him." "What, you want to pursue him?" Everyone was shocked by her sonorous declaration of love. "What's wrong with that?" Annie asked. "Of course not." Fang Shishir, Yi Dingdang and Wu Du said at the same time. Lu Qingmei also said the same thing in her heart. Chapter 931. The few of them glared at Annie and asked, "Have you asked for our opinion if you want to pursue him? We are his girlfriends." "Can't I pursue him if he has a girlfriend? Of course I have to fight for my own happiness." Anne retorted. "You." Yi Dingdang wanted to call her shameless, but she didn't say it out loud. After a while she said, "You have no part in it." And was confident and smiled sweetly, "That might not be the case. Don't think that we won't do anything to you just because you're a princess." Yi Dingdang said angrily. "I've never thought of using my identity as a princess to pursue him. I'm just an ordinary girl who likes him." Yi Dingdang was about to flip out when she was stopped by Fang Shishir. If it was anyone else, they definitely wouldn't be able to stop Yi Dingdang, but for some reason she could listen to Fang Shishir. Fang Shishir slowly shook her head. "There's no need. Tang Zheng isn't someone who can be pursued by just anyone." In fact, she understood Tang Zheng the best. Even though she was a bit angry before, once she calmed down and saw Tang Zheng's reaction, she gradually understood. Annie's actions were to cut off the head and pick on the hot head, but Tang Zheng was clearly rejecting her, so at this time she was being overbearing. She had a plan. If Tang Jing knew what she was thinking, he would definitely give her a thumbs up. What a smart girl. Since Fang Shishir said so, the others didn't do anything to stop Anne. Tang Jing spent the next few days in torment. Being sandwiched between too many women wasn't a happy thing. If he wasn't careful, he would lose sight of one and offend another. He would be scolded. He had been deliberately avoiding Anne, but Anne was like Sherlock Holmes. No matter where Tang Jing hid, she could always find him. Fortunately, the Yin family in Qinpadian often came to visit him, giving him an excuse to send Anne away. Many things had happened in the capital while he was away. The imperial city was still under tight lockdown. This once world-class tourist attraction had become a restricted military zone. Even the Yin family spies were unable to enter. However, it was speculated that the authorities had not given up yet. They wanted to dig 3 feet into the ground to find the 5-clawed golden dragon. When Tang Jing heard this, he shook his head and smiled indifferently. Let them do their useless work. However, there was another piece of news that Tang Jing did not expect. The Ye family had actually received strong support from the government and was developing vigorously throughout the country. Yin Padian sighed and said that this was the opportunity that Yi Xuanji had been looking forward to. The other party would definitely seize this opportunity firmly. Tang Jing shrugged his shoulders as he did not mind. The Yi family allied with the government, so what could they do? Society had undergone a huge change. Without the support of a true expert, the rise of a family was like a castle in the air. It could easily collapse. However, Yin Padian was a little serious. He said that he still had to pay more attention to the Ye family, as Yi Xuanji was not an ordinary person. Tang Jing laughed it off. Yin Padian and Qin Badian asked about the gains of Tang Jing's trip to Europe. Tang Jing gave a simple introduction and the two of them were completely shocked. The way they looked at Tang Jing was extremely complicated. This was an achievement that many people could not even dream of, but it was completed by Tang Jing with just a raise of his hand. Only now did they understand why Tang Jing did not put the Yi family in his eyes at all. The difference in vision between the two sides was like heaven and earth. Tang Jing repeatedly warned them not to tell anyone, and they all understood tacitly. On this day the weather was clear. The arrival of a group of people broke the silence of the villa. This group of people had different styles and there were old, young and young people. Tang Jing stood at the door to welcome them. His gaze was complicated, especially when it landed on one of them, Wu Junshan, his biological father. Wu Junshan also looked at him, filled with mixed feelings. Tang Jing nodded slightly, which could be considered as a greeting, and then shifted his gaze to the others. The Witch clan elder brought a few elites from the clan. This time he had asked the Witch clan elder to come here with a mission. Because with Anne here, he could not rashly take out the spar and let everyone absorb the energy to cultivate. That would be a confession without a fight. He was prepared to let the Witch clan elder bring the spar back to the island. The so-called sacred ground was naturally built on the island, and that was his base. In addition, the summer vacation had already begun. He was prepared to let Fang Shishir, Lu Qingmei and the others go to the island in the name of a vacation to secretly cultivate. This way he could avoid Anne. The spar was of great importance. Unless it was the Witch clan elder escorting it, he would not be at ease. Moreover, the Witch clan elder had repeatedly requested to see him, so he allowed it. When the elders and clansmen saw Tang Jing, they were extremely excited. They all stepped forward and bowed, calling out to Lord Envoy. Tang Jing looked at them with gratification. This group of Witch clan people had already firmly merged with him. Even if Qiyu was revived, he might not be able to control them. Elder and the brothers of the Witch clan, it's been a long journey. Everyone shook their heads. It's not hard hearing the envoy summons. We are excited. We all want to be like Yi Yuan, able to help the envoy and not stay on the island to live a comfortable life. Yi Yuan brought a group of clansmen to travel around the country to protect Tang Linger. Life on the island is not comfortable, but a kind of preparation. When everyone is ready, I naturally look forward to everyone coming back to help me. Tang Jing said. The Witch clan members that returned this time were at least fasting. The Witch clan members had cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell and the god-slaying scroll, and their cultivation had advanced at a rapid pace. The Witch clan was indeed worthy of being Qiyu's old subordinates. Many people could not compare to their bloodline. Cultivation talent was hidden in his bloodline. Once it was activated, the potential that would erupt would be extremely dazzling. Yes, Lord Envoy. Everyone nodded. Wu Junshan was not surprised. He could see the admiration and respect that the Witch clan members had for Tang Jing from the bottom of their hearts during his daily life on the island. Tang Zheng's words were like an imperial edict. At the same time that he was gratified, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. After operating in the martial sect for so many years, he had indeed subdued a portion of his trusted aides. However, even more people were disloyal to him and in the end even became his enemy. The new generation overtook the old and that was it. The witch clan members did not all live in the villa. Instead, they were arranged to live in some of the surrounding buildings. That was their residence. The villa had been attacked a few times, making Tang Jing more and more aware of the importance of safety. This was his home and he had to protect it in all aspects. He could not trust others, so arranging for the witch clan members to protect the villa was the safest method. The witch clan was also very happy to do this. Protecting the envoy's home was a great honor. Back then, when they were on the island, the competition for this opportunity could be said to be extremely intense. The witch clan elder and Wu Junshan entered the villa. Lan Yu and Wu Junshan looked at each other. Lan Yu nodded lightly with a trace of a smile on her lips. Wu Junshan's heart moved. He understood what his wife meant. She was saying that her relationship with Tang Zheng had improved. He was also very happy. It was a long and difficult road to win back Tang Zheng's respect, but he had to do it. However, looking at the room full of women, Wu Junshan slapped his forehead. He felt a headache coming on. Although he had heard of it, seeing it with his own eyes still shocked him. It was as if the most beautiful women in the world lived here. His son was much stronger than him in this aspect. He could not even handle a wife. He did not know how this kid dealt with women. As someone who had experienced it before, although it was his first time seeing these women, he did not think that they were really pure friends with Tang Zheng. As a man he knew this too well. The elder was not surprised. Even in ancient times, it was normal to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. He felt that it was natural for the strong to have more than one woman. However, it was the first time most of the women in the room had seen the 2 of them. They all opened their eyes wide in curiosity, especially when they found out that Wu Junshan was Tang Zheng's father, and had a bright idea and actually personally poured tea for him, causing the other girls to clench their teeth. This princess was indeed cunning to think of a bribe so quickly. Wu Junshan accepted it calmly. The other party's princess identity did not have much of a halo to him. His attention was mostly on Wu. Wu Junshan obediently went forward and bowed. Wu Junshan looked at her with approval. His cultivation had improved greatly. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Tang Zheng went straight to the point and said, "I want to announce something. Shirshir and Ding Dang are already on summer vacation, so it's not good to stay at home, so why don't we go out and see the outside world? In addition, Teacher Lu has been working very hard during this period of time, so we'll go on vacation with the 2 of them. I will arrange for the elders to accompany you and protect your safety." When these words were spoken, everyone looked at each other in dismay. This was because to most people, this was a sudden attack and they did not know about it beforehand. "Why did you send us away?" Yi Dingdang keenly noticed the key point and suspiciously looked at Tang Zheng and An. "Don't let your imagination run wild. I have business to do." "What business is there that you can't tell us?" Yi Dingdang asked. The so-called business was that he was preparing to make a trip to the Azure Dragon Palace. Moreover, he was not alone but gathered many people. Empyrean Fairy had to go, Tian Chanzi also had to go, Lan Yu and Wu were duty-bound, and as for Wu Junshan, when he heard the news, he rushed back even though he was far away. They were originally from the martial organization and were inextricably linked to the Azure Dragon Palace. They wanted to settle things with the Azure Dragon Palace, and this was something that Tang Zheng had no reason to stop. Once these people left, the villa's defensive power would be empty. Tang Zheng did not feel at ease leaving everyone behind. Of course, he did not want to tell them the truth, fearing that they would be worried. Seeing Yi Dingdang aggressively ask, Tang Zheng wished that he could pick her up and spank her. She was becoming more and more arrogant. Although he had been back for a few days, there were too many people around, so he did not have a chance to be alone with her. Otherwise he would definitely take care of her. Seeing that Tang Zheng could not answer, Yi Dingdang suddenly realized and said, "I understand. You must want to send us away so that you can be with her." Cough cough. Tang Zheng almost choked to death on his saliva. What did this have to do with An? An's eyes lit up when she heard this. She looked at Tang Zheng in surprise and happily said, "What's wrong with that? Men should be given freedom. If you keep controlling them, then they will never grow up. Of course you want it to be like this. You're still pretending to be obedient." Yi Dingdang ridiculed. "You must go on vacation. There is no room for discussion." Tang Zheng stared and said unquestionably, Chapter 932. Looking at the stubborn Yi Dingdang, Tang Jing felt a headache coming on. However, she was not a cultivator, so it did not matter if she did not go to the island. Since that was the case, he would let her be. The corners of Yi Dingdong's mouth curled up into a smile as she coldly looked at Annie, as if to say that she was staring at her. And shrugged her shoulders. It did not matter, it was always a good thing to have one less competitor by her side. What about them? Fang Shishir pointed at Wu and the others and asked curiously. They still have other things to do, so there's no time to lose. They will leave tomorrow. So anxious? Fang Shishir was surprised. Yes, summer vacation is not long. If we leave early we can play for a few more days. Although everyone had many questions in their hearts, if Tang Jing did not say anything, no one could force him. Brother, what about me? Nana tugged at the corner of Tang Jing's clothes. Nana also wants to go out and play. Tang Jing looked at Empyrean Fairy and seeing her nod, he carried her and smiled affectionately. Of course you will go too. Nana immediately clapped her hands and said excitedly, That's great, Nana also wants to go out and play, but it would be good if Big Brother came with me. If you stick to Big Brother all day you won't grow up. Nana thought for a while, then firmly shook her head. No, Nana wants to grow up and become as beautiful as Big Sister and the others. Tang Jing laughed out loud and called the clan elder into the study room alone. The two of them talked for a long time, and the clan elder reported to him in detail about the situation on the island. When he heard that there were many new babies born in the witch clan, Tang Jing was pleasantly surprised. These babies were not comparable to the current adult witch clan. These babies were the new blood, the future of the witch clan. They could cultivate from a young age, so their future achievements would definitely be greater than the current witch clan. When the clan elder heard Tang Jing introduce the spar, he was overjoyed and said excitedly, If we have this spar, then our clansman's cultivation will be faster, and we will be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Crystals are very important, so they must be closely guarded, do you understand? Understood. The elder nodded heavily. However, there is another life form in this crystal stone. Even though I don't know what it is definitely alive. When we cultivate, the crystal stone will become transparent and everyone will see it. We must be careful because there will be a day when the crystal stone will be completely absorbed and the life form will be released. Tang Jing solemnly warned. The elder said without hesitation, Sir Envoy, rest assured. Our entire clan will be on guard. If the creature from beyond the heavens comes out, we will definitely capture it alive. No, don't capture it alive. Inform me when it's about to break free. I want to deal with it personally, Tang Jing said. Although the elder felt that he was making a mountain out of a molehill, he still agreed without hesitation. Shishir and sister may still don't know about this. When the time comes you will tell them. Their cultivation is not as good as yours, elder, so you have to guide them more. Elder, don't worry. I will pass on all my cultivation experiences to them. It's just that the island is remote. I don't know if they have the habit of living here. The elder said worriedly. Tang Jing smiled faintly and said that they were not young misses of rich families, so there was no need to worry about this. That night, everyone in the house sat at a large table to eat. It seemed to be happy and harmonious, but in fact there was an undercurrent surging. Tang Jing and Lan Yu's relationship was much more harmonious, but with Wu Junshan he was still cold. Yi Dingdang and An were fighting openly and secretly. A meal was like a war. In the middle of the night, a person secretly sneaked into Tang Jing's room. It was actually the reserved Fang Shishir. She was about to leave, so she finally put aside her shyness and cherished this rare moment with Tang Jing. The two fought to their heart's content for most of the night before falling asleep. And who was next door did not sleep for most of the night. Although the soundproofing of the room was good, a woman's sixth sense still sensed that there must be another woman lying on Tang Jing's bed next door. Of course, she was jealous in her heart, but there was nothing she could do. She silently comforted herself that if she persevered, the one lying on the bed would definitely be her. The next day when the sky was bright, Tang Jing and Fang Shishir walked out together. Under everyone's gaze, although Fang Shishir was shy, her hand was tightly held by Tang Jing. She could not escape at all, but she was very happy. This was the two of them openly showing their love, which was a treatment that no one else had ever received. The other women's eyes were burning, wishing that they could replace Fang Shishir. The witch clan elder took a look and left with the crystal stone. The crystal stone was taken out from Sumeru world. The witch clan elder did not have a heaven-level magic treasure storage bag, so he could only quietly put the crystal stone on a truck and drive it to the sea. He had already arranged for a ship to bring the crystal stone to the island. When everyone reluctantly left, Tang Zheng and the others were also ready to leave. At this time, An knew that Tang Zheng did not want to stay behind to accompany her, but also wanted to leave. She wanted to chase after him, but was rejected by Tang Zheng without hesitation. Yi Dingdang was immediately overjoyed, so Tang Zheng did not want to be together with An. She had wronged him. Tang Zheng, Empyrean Fairy, Tian Chanzi, Wu Junshan, Lan Yu Wu Wu, and Li Xiaotian sat in 2 cars and directly drove out of the capital. But just as they left the capital, the number of cars decreased, and they realized that there was a tail following behind them. It was actually An. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry, and had really put in a lot of effort, but this time it was too dangerous, so of course he could not bring her along. Thus, Tang Zheng forcefully sent her back and let Yi Dingdang watch over her. Only then could he leave alone. As for Yi Dingdang and making a ruckus at home, Tang Zheng did not care. In any case, the 2 of them were evenly matched, so neither of them would be at a disadvantage. 3 days later, everyone arrived at the foot of the mountain where the Azure Dragon Palace was located. The road had long since disappeared, and they had been walking for nearly half a day. The Azure Dragon Palace was hidden in such a deserted place, no wonder no one could discover it. Li Xiaotian stared blankly at the mountain in front of her. Along the way she had many questions. Although she had lost her memories, her intelligence had not decreased in the slightest. These days she had already discovered many clues. When others faced her they were especially unnatural. Especially at the very beginning, there was even a hint of hostility mixed in. After such a long time of integration, this hostility gradually weakened. Although she wanted to integrate into this big family, there was always a feeling of being out of place in her heart. She gradually understood that before she lost her memories she must have been at odds with everyone. Perhaps she was a big bad person. This thought gave her a fright. She had never thought of herself as a bad person. She was kind-hearted, and the thing she wanted to do most was to help others. This time she saw Tang Zheng deliberately send away his confidants and bring her along. How could she not be surprised? She guessed that this might have something to do with her identity. What was her identity? She had silently asked herself many times, but there was no answer. She hoped to find the answer, but she was also somewhat afraid. If unfortunately she guessed correctly she was a bad person, then what should she do? She looked at her hands. If these hands had killed someone and were covered in blood. She clutched her head, not daring to continue thinking. Seeing her reaction, Tang Zheng was shocked. Now he was sure that she had completely lost her memories under the influence of the soul-searching technique, and was not pretending. "What's wrong with you?" Li Xiaotian suddenly raised her head and asked, "What are we doing here?" "There is a group of bad people here. They have harmed many people, so we need to deal with them," Tang Zheng said implicitly. "Who is that?" Li Xiaotian looked at him with burning eyes and asked. "Azure Dragon Palace." Li Xiaotian's eyes were blank. She shook her head and said that she had never heard of these 3 words. "It doesn't matter if you haven't heard of it. Since you are here to deal with bad people, why did you bring me along? I don't know martial arts. Moreover, I don't want to fight." Although she had once saved a little girl who was almost killed by a car, she still did not know that she knew martial arts. Her usual behavior was no different from ordinary people. Tang Zheng was silent. He did not know how to answer. Seeing his reaction, Li Xiaotian suddenly realized something. Her expression became very depressed. She nervously asked, "Am I a person from the Azure Dragon Palace?" Tang Zheng's eyelids fiercely jumped. He was surprised that her guess was so accurate. She was still so smart. How should he answer this? "You don't need to answer. I already know the answer. I also finally understand why they were always on guard against me. They were hostile. So I really was a bad person in the past," Li Xiaotian miserably said. She looked as if she had lost her soul. Tang Zheng had never seen such pain on her face. She looked as if she had lost her soul. It was as if her spirit had been sucked away in an instant. Tang Zheng could not help but blame himself. Was he too cruel? He had already obtained information from her. Why did he have to bring her here? This was to open up her scars and then sprinkle a handful of salt on it. No matter how many bad things she had done in the past, from this moment on, Tang Zheng no longer resented her. This was because he hated the old Li Xiaotian. Now she was a brand new Li Xiaotian. A true new life. "Don't be sad. That is not the current you. You are now a good person." Tang Zheng's comforting words were somewhat weak. "But I was bad before." Li Xiaotian said, "Did I kill people before?" Tang Zheng did not lie and nodded lightly. Li Xiaotian burst into tears and squatted on the ground. This was out of everyone's expectations, especially Wu. She had always had a huge opinion of Li Xiaotian and always thought that Li Xiaotian was pretending to lose her memories. But at this moment, seeing Li Xiaotian's reaction, this belief was shaken. Could it be that she had really changed? Wu was not a petty person. When she confirmed that Li Xiaotian had really changed, the anger in her heart lessened by a lot. Looking at Li Xiaotian, she suddenly felt that he was a little pitiful. She bent down and gently patted Li Xiaotian's back, saying, "Don't be sad, what I hate is the past you. Actually, you're a good person now. Back then, your actions of saving that little girl had already moved me." "Really?" Li Xiaotian asked pitifully with tears streaming down her face. Wu nodded firmly. "Of course it's true." Chapter 933. Although Wu hated evil as if it was his enemy, he was still a magnanimous person. Seeing Li Xiaotian reveal his true feelings, he sincerely said those words. Li Xiaotian wiped away her tears, stood up and said, "Thank you, I'm much better now. Why don't you go home first?" Tang Jing said softly. Li Xiaotian thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, since I want to be a good person and break away from the past, then the best way is to face the past." Tang Jing secretly praised and said, "Then let's continue forward." This small episode did not really affect everyone's mood. On the contrary, because of Li Xiaotian's true feelings, everyone accepted her. Not long after, they arrived at a stream on the mountainside. A fisherman wearing a bamboo hat sat by the stream, holding a long bamboo fishing rod in his hand, with a straight hook hanging on the fishing line. In the clear stream, the fish circled around the empty hook, as if it was delicious and wanted to take a bite. "Elder Angler," Tang Jing subconsciously called out. The fisherman did not even turn his head as he stared at the water, as if the fish were much more attractive than them. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at the fisherman in shock. This person looked like an ordinary old man who was infatuated with the forest, but in reality he was extremely deep. They could not see through him at all. The two of them looked at each other and read the meaning in each other's eyes. This fisherman was definitely a martial king. To them, the martial king realm was a realm that they yearned for, but it was not unreachable. Ever since they left the martial sect, the two of them had spent most of their time on the island, broadening their horizons and living with the witch clan every day. Although they were not cultivators, they had many things in common with cultivation. Their cultivation had also advanced by leaps and bounds, and they had already touched the threshold of the martial king realm, reaching the 9th level of the Great Master realm. Tang Jing knew that the fisherman was one of the 3 great consecrators of the Azure Dragon Palace. His cultivation was even higher than that of the fair-faced flying dragon, so he had naturally reached the martial king realm. Seeing that the other party did not react, he walked up and arrived behind the fisherman. The muscles on Elder Angler's neck twitched slightly, but Tang Jing still keenly noticed it. Tang Jing's footsteps were very light and ordinary, but in Elder Angler's heart, these footsteps had already conveyed many things. The person who came was an expert. He finally turned his head slowly and his gaze fell on Tang Jing's face. His eyes flickered as if he was trying to guess the other's identity. He did not know Tang Jing. Although he was a consecrator of the Azure Dragon Hall, he spent most of his time fishing here, unlike fair-faced flying dragon who was involved in the affairs of the Azure Dragon Hall. He hadn't even seen Tang Jing's photo before. However, his attention was quickly attracted by Li Xiaotian, and his pupils suddenly shrank. The news of Li Xiaotian's death had already been brought back by Song Yu, but why was she standing in front of him alive? How were these people related to her? Questions flashed through Elder Angler's mind, but when his gaze landed on Wu Junshan and Lan Yu, he could no longer conceal his shock. "It's you guys." He instantly knew who these people were because he recognized Wu Junshan and Lan Yu. Towards these two, even if he did not care about worldly affairs, he would definitely recognize them. "Li Xiaotian, you actually betrayed the Azure Dragon Hall, betrayed the High Lord," Elder Angler angrily said. Hearing him call out her name, Li Xiaotian became emotional and bit her lips. Tang Jing blocked Elder Angler's gaze and said, "Don't blame me for bullying a girl. If you have anything to say, come at me." "You're Tang Jing?" Tang Jing faintly smiled, tacitly agreeing. "You have guts, daring to come to the Azure Dragon Hall. Li Xiaotian submitted to you, could it be that she did not tell you how powerful the Azure Dragon Hall is?" Elder Angler stood up and glared at Tang Jing like a tiger watching its prey. "The Azure Dragon Hall is powerful, but it is not invincible. Since you are a consecrator of the Azure Dragon Hall, I will first defeat you." With a tap of his finger, the Battle Soul sword flew out of thin air and slashed towards Elder Angler. Elder Angler's eyes flashed. He lightly shook his wrist and the fishing line flew towards Battle Spirit, wrapping around the sword in an attempt to stop its attack. Battle Spirit shone brightly, but it was unknown what material the fishing line was made of, but it actually did not break. However, Battle Spirit's attack did not decrease. Elder Angler hurriedly withdrew his move. The fishing line loosened and like a snake, it turned around and shot towards Tang Zheng like a dart. Break. Tang Zheng gave a low roar, and the Battle Soul Sword's attack changed direction, directly slashing at the fishing line. Clang. Like a zither string breaking, the fishing line finally broke into two, but the hook still shot towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng coldly snorted. He stretched out his hand and a small black hole appeared in his palm. The fishing hook flashed and disappeared into the black hole. Elder Angler's expression became especially cold. Tang Zheng's strength was high beyond his expectations. Moreover, with the help of others, he would not be able to resist at all. Immediately, he had the intention to retreat. However, Battle Spirit closed in step by step, not giving him the chance. In an instant, it appeared in front of him and slashed down. Wah! The air was like seawater, automatically splitting to two sides. A wave of oppressive sword chi rushed towards his face. He hurriedly dodged, but the fishing rod in his hand pointed towards Tang Zheng. An inch longer was an inch stronger, that was for ordinary people. Although the fishing rod was very long, this advantage did not exist for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng slightly retreated, dodging the attack. However, he still controlled his sword to attack from afar. A line of blood extended from Elder Angler's face all the way to his chin. A look of pain flashed in his old eyes. However, he was not cut in half because at the critical moment, he controlled the fishing rod to point at the ground. The fishing rod bent and he used the rebound force to fly backwards. Battle Spirit's sword only left a line of blood on his face and did not harm his life. He did not stop. The fishing rod tapped on the ground a few more times. Then, as if he was stepping on stilts, he quickly fled towards the top of the mountain. A cold light flashed in Tang Zheng's eyes. Battle Spirit's sword chased after him. Just as the other party was about to disappear into the forest, Battle Spirit's sword caught up with him. A flower of blood bloomed on his back. He fell into the forest and completely disappeared. Chase. Tang Zheng did not hesitate. He took the lead and chased towards the top of the mountain. The others were not willing to fall behind, but Li Xiaotian stood in place, not knowing what to do. She had forgotten how to use martial arts and how to increase her speed. Seeing this, Wu grabbed her hand and said, "Come with me." "Thank you." Li Xiaotian looked at her gratefully, allowing her to lead him as they chased towards the top of the mountain. When she got used to the speed, she gradually felt that her body's functions were completely activated. In the forest, other than the sound of the wind, there was only the sound of a few people rushing. The top of the mountain was in sight, and the pitch-black house came into view. Tang Zheng subconsciously slowed down his footsteps and reminded, "We have already reached the core area of the Azure Dragon Palace. Everyone be careful." Everyone nodded in agreement. Finally, they stopped in front of the house and focused their gazes on it. There was still blood on the ground, disappearing behind the door. Tang Zheng shouted in a clear voice, "Elder Angler, Lord, could it be that you want to be a coward and not come out?" "Nonsense." With a creak, the door opened. The Elder Angler stood at the door with a pale face. He held onto the door frame with one hand as if he could fall at any time. His entire body was wet from head to toe, but it was wet from blood. Furthermore, there were a few drops of blood hanging from the corner of his clothes. The Elder Angler said weakly, "Tang Zheng, you are courting death. Don't think that just because you defeated me, you will defeat the Azure Dragon Palace. Since you dare to say such words, then show me your methods." "I will wait and see," Tang Zheng said indifferently. Blood guillotine attack. The Elder Angler clenched his teeth and suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs. So. More than 10 blood guillotine flew out from the black house and swept over everyone's heads. Tang Zheng, Empyrean Fairy, and Tian Chanzi had already seen the power of the blood guillotine in the 100,000 Great Mountains. They did not completely let down their guard, but they also did not treat it as if they were facing a great enemy. However, the blood guillotine was used in conjunction with a formation. At this moment, the other party was in a hurry to meet the enemy and the formation was not completed. Tang Zheng took advantage of the situation to rise up, and with familiar ease, he controlled Battle Soul to meet a blood guillotine, directly chopping it to the ground. Tian Chanzi pointed his finger and a sharp sword chi also struck a blood guillotine. As for Empyrean Fairy, she did not even look at it. Wu Junshan and the others felt waves in their hearts. This was the power that the Azure Dragon Hall relied on. It was indeed extraordinary. They were not willing to fall behind and fought back. Suddenly, a few people jumped out from the Black House. They were all master-level martial artists and were members of the Blood Guillotine. Seeing that their formation was disrupted by the other party before it was completed, they did not panic. Instead, they quickly fixed the formation's flaws and formed a complete formation. They attacked again, but the blood guillotines in the air became slippery like loaches. There was no way to attack. Empyrean Fairy finally did not remain indifferent. She coldly looked at the group and said, "You still want to use this thing to stop us? Some things can be done once but not twice." With a thought, the stately mountain and river map flew into the air and a small hill descended from the stately mountain and river map. Everyone was shocked. Before they could react, they saw the top of their heads turn black. Boom. The entire mountain trembled as the small hill landed on top of the Black House. All the blood guillotines were crushed under the small hill, not a single sound could be heard. Seeing her move, Wu Junshan and the others were shocked speechless. This was the power of a celestial. Compared to it, they were like babies. Tang Jing was not surprised. The last time they faced the blood guillotines, they were restrained by the High Lord, so she could not use such a big move. This time, without the High Lord's restraint, the Empyrean Fairy used a big move right from the start. They could not resist at all. The Empyrean Fairy waved her hand and coldly snorted. Not far away, the angler looked at this scene with a pale face. Fortunately, he acted according to the situation and escaped in time. Otherwise, he would have been crushed by the small hill. Chapter 934. The heavens and earth were silent, as if even the wind had sensed the danger and took a detour. Suddenly the hill began to shake. Everyone's expression changed as they subconsciously cried out. The Empyrean Fairy's eyes narrowed as she looked at this scene suspiciously. Boom. With a loud explosion, the hill exploded, turning into large rocks that flew in all directions. Everyone was hit by the rocks and hurriedly used their cultivation to block them. When the rocks dissipated, they discovered that there was a person standing in the ruins. High Lord. He was wearing a mask and his cold gaze swept over everyone as he said, "You actually found this place." This was the first time that Wu Junshan and Lan Yu had seen a High Lord. Their expressions kept changing. This High Lord had deceived everyone and secretly controlled the martial sect. This was a great humiliation to Wu Junshan. That was why he took the initiative to come and settle this matter. At this moment, looking at the High Lord, he wanted nothing more than to charge forward and fight to the death. "High Lord, it's Li Xiaotian who betrayed us." Elder Angler hurriedly explained. "So she didn't die but betrayed us." The High Lord's gaze turned and stabbed Li Xiaotian's chest like a sharp knife. Immediately, she felt a strong sense of suffocation and her face became pale, but she gritted her teeth and held on. She righteously said, "I didn't betray you, I just turned from the dark to the light. You are a bad person and I am a good person." Good person? The High Lord ruminated on these two words and looked at her as if he didn't recognize her. He said, "You still want to be a good person?" "Of course." Li Xiaotian proudly raised her neck. The High Lord stared at her and suddenly said in a shocking voice, "You are not Li Xiaotian." He understood the original Li Xiaotian very well. That was a woman who would do anything to achieve her goals. How could she say that she wanted to be a good person? She should be the one who said that good people don't live long. Li Xiaotian didn't back down. Instead, he said directly, "Of course I'm not the Li Xiaotian you knew. That Li Xiaotian is already dead. This is my new life." Freshman. The High Lord repeated this absurd word. "Tang Jing, how did you do it? She was actually brainwashed by you just like that?" The corners of Tang Jing's mouth curled up into a smile. It wasn't easy to shock a High Lord like this. People tend to be kind. This is the law of nature and also the most basic human nature. She is a kind person deep down in her heart. It's only because you guys instilled too many wrong ideas that she went astray and became what she was in the past. Now she has already left behind her past and is a brand new self." Tang Jing said tirelessly. The Great Lord snorted in disdain. "No matter how you did it, since she's already standing on the opposite side of me, I won't let her leave alive." "Do you think you have the right to say that? I found your Azure Dragon Hall's lair. I won't let you leave alive," Tang Jing retorted. You won last time, but it doesn't mean that you'll win this time." The Great Lord's voice was powerful and full of confidence. "Then we'll know once we try." The Empyrean Fairy spoke first. She was still brooding over the loss last time. This time she wanted to give the Great Lord a fatal blow. The Empyrean Fairy cast a spell. The mountain river map flew directly above the Great Lord's head. A powerful aura spread out from the mountain river map. The Great Lord's expression was normal. His fingers flipped and quickly formed a hand seal. At the same time, he slowly opened his mouth and spat out a syllable. This syllable sounded in the world, stirring up the world and reverberating in people's hearts. Everyone was shocked. Tang Zheng, the Empyrean Fairy, and Tian Chanzi had seen the Great Lord's non-phase method. But from the first syllable, they had already judged that the Great Lord's power had greatly increased. The power of this syllable was already very terrifying. Boom! This syllable was like the most powerful gale between heaven and earth. It swept across the top of the mountain. In an instant, the ruins and rocks exploded. The second syllable came out of his mouth. It was more natural and majestic. Hum. 5 syllables came out of his throat in one breath. His chest, abdomen, and vocal cords resonated. After he spat out these 5 syllables, everyone felt a great pressure as expected. He spoke too fast. After the 5 syllables were uttered in an instant, the atmosphere between heaven and earth changed. Everyone felt suppressed by the terrible force falling from the sky and couldn't move at all. My mistake. This time I should have brought Linger with me. Because only her mind is pure and undistracted, she can avoid this pervasive non-phase method. Tang Zheng couldn't help but regret. As soon as the 5 syllables came out, everyone seemed to have fallen into glue. Their movements became very slow, and the air seemed to have become incomparably sticky. Tang Zheng secretly felt bad. When he was about to fight back, he heard the Empyrean Fairy shout, "Break!" The mountain river map shone brightly. Black things spewed out from the mountain river map. A monstrous flood washed down, as if it was going to directly break the Great Lord into pieces. At this time, the Great Lord opened his mouth again. A word penetrated layers of obstacles between his chest and abdomen and burst out from his throat. He had completely mastered the 6 words of the non-phase method. As soon as the 6th syllable came out, the atmosphere between heaven and earth changed dramatically, and the flood from the sky stopped. Time and space froze at this moment. Everyone had turned into puppets. However, the Great Lord's eyes fluctuated very fiercely. Obviously, this 6th word was something that he had just cultivated and was not proficient in. Moreover, using the non-phase method and spitting out the 6 words of the proverb consumed a lot of energy and mind. When he spat out the 6 words of the proverb, he must be undistracted. Therefore, when he restricted the opponent, he was also restricted and had no power to protect himself. However, the non-phase method attacked indiscriminately. As long as it was within the range of the 6 words of the proverb, as long as anyone had murderous intent, it would be difficult to escape and could not break through. In particular, he had spat out the 6th word. The power was even more incomparable. It was much more powerful than when he was in the 100,000 mountains. When Tang Zheng and the others heard the 6th voice, they immediately knew that the situation was not good. They looked at the monstrous flood suspended above the Great Lord's head. It was as if it was frozen, motionless. This scene almost caused them to collapse, but they had no other choice. They could only watch all of this happen because they couldn't even move a finger. Tang Zheng crazily operated his power, trying to break through this imprisonment, but he found that the non-phase method was really strange. The more anxious he was, the heavier his murderous intent, and the more he felt that there was a powerful force around him that was shrinking and squeezing his body, as if it wanted to crush him. This was the power of the non-phase method breaking through to the 6th level. The first 5 levels corresponded to the 5 syllables. Although it could affect people's actions, it had no real lethality and had to rely on external objects to attack. The flying guillotine came into being and made up for this flaw. But when the non-phase method broke through to the 6th level, the 6th syllable could be completely spoken, and the non-phase method was achieved. This was not only to imprison others but also to attack the other party. The attacked person would feel that there was an increasingly large and terrifying force squeezing their body from all directions. When the body finally could not resist this force, they would die. Even without the flying guillotine, it could still kill people in a flash. The Empyrean Fairy's face became pale and she bitterly said, "The non-phase method is so powerful, I miscalculated." Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other and firmly said, "Even if we die, we must escape. We must not let him catch us all in one fell swoop. Little Zheng cannot have any accident." The two desperately operated their power, trying to offset this force, but it was completely futile. It was like a rope around their neck. The more they struggled, the tighter it became. In the end, they could not escape the fate of being strangled. Elder Angler was ecstatic to see this scene. Of course, he was clear about the power of the non-phase method. However, he did not expect that the Great Lord would come out of seclusion and actually reach such a level. He had truly cultivated the non-phase method. Who told you to be arrogant? With the Great Lord here, no one can overthrow the Azure Dragon Hall. Elder Angler happily said. Tang Jing unwillingly opened his eyes wide. He originally thought that with so many people, there would be a way to break the situation. Moreover, he had summed up the experience with the Empyrean Fairy in advance and discussed countermeasures. In the end, they determined that although they relied on Ling to break the situation last time, that was the first time they faced the non-phase method. This time, even if there was no Ling they would absolutely not repeat the same mistake and let the Great Lord succeed. Because as long as they struck first, there would be a glimmer of hope. However, they never thought that the Great Lord would actually completely cultivate the non-phase method. When the 6 words were used, the power was much greater than expected. For a while they fell into the same predicament twice, and it was even more dangerous. The power created by the 6 words was absolutely not easy for them to break, so what should they do? The pressure on his body was getting bigger and bigger, as if his body was being squeezed by the power from all directions. Suddenly, Tang Jing felt that there was movement around him. A person gently lifted his foot and took a step forward. What the hell? Tang Jing ran past 10,000 alpacas in the play, but he could not move and could not see clearly what was happening around him. Who was this person who took a step forward? One must know that this was within the attack range of the non-phase method. Even the Empyrean Fairy, a master in the deity stage, could not escape, let alone other people. Could it be that this voice came from another supermaster? No. Tang Jing subconsciously denied. Listening to this voice, it seemed that this person had been standing beside them, indicating that they were together. He silently counted one by one, but could not think of anyone who could have this ability. Chapter 935. Finally, Tang Jing saw the person who came out. Li Xiaotian. The others also saw her, and it was incredible. How could she be safe and sound? Wasn't she full of murderous intent before? Tang Jing thought quickly and suddenly realized. Li Xiaotian lost her memory and was reborn. The murderous intent in her heart disappeared, and she became as pure and kind as a baby. This was the same as Linger, so she could not be affected by the non-phase method. Li Xiaotian looked at herself in surprise, and then looked at the others. She did not know why she could move freely and was not affected. The others looked at her in shock, especially the Lord and the dangling fisher. They knew her very well. In any case, she might have this ability. But everything in front of them made them believe how wrong their judgment was. Empyrean Fairy and the others, like Tang Jing, immediately understood the reason, and their eyes were filled with joy. It was really a pleasant surprise to bring her here this time. Tang Jing chose to forgive her, but he did not expect that now it would produce such an unexpected result. The deadlock of certain death was broken. Tang Jing could not wait to shout, Li Xiaotian, go and attack the Lord. His non-phase method will naturally lose its power. Li Xiaotian bit her lips and hesitated. Tang Jing thought she was worried about her safety and was afraid of the Lord's counterattack. He quickly explained, don't worry, he is now a toothless tiger. He can't jump and threaten you. Li Xiaotian shook her head slightly. I'm not worried about my safety. I just want to ask him why he wants me to become a bad person like before. The sadness and frustration in her words made people feel like their hearts were being twisted by a knife. Li Xiaotian, from the day your master picked you up, your life belongs to the Azure Dragon Hall. What kind of person you want to become, of course, is up to me. There is no reason. The Lord said bluntly. Li Xiaotian's tears fell from the corner of her eyes. Have you never considered my feelings? What do you feel? The only thing you have to do is follow my orders. Li Xiaotian, if you turn back now and kill those people, I can spare your life. Otherwise, your fate will be the same as theirs. You will die without a burial ground. The Great Lord's tone was still unyielding. No. Li Xiaotian suddenly let out a heart-wrenching roar. You have no right to decide my life. That's not the life I want. The Great Lord's eyes became very sharp as he stared at her. Suddenly, he had an idea and said, You lost your memory, right? Tang Jing's head trembled. The High Lord was indeed very powerful. He had actually seen through the clues. Li Xiaotian coldly said, I have lost my memories. That memory was the darkest moment of my life. To be able to remove it from my mind is my greatest fortune. I see. I finally understand. Tang Jing, you really have a good method. You actually used this kind of method to make her betray me. Tang Jing coldly snorted and said, a just cause enjoys abundant support while an unjust cause finds little support. Everyone has a scale in their heart. Let them go. Otherwise I won't be polite. Li Xiaotian threatened. Do you have the guts to deal with me? The Great Lord's aura was very strong. He could see an intense fear and timidity in Li Xiaotian's eyes. This was no longer the decisive killing her from before. Li Xiaotian, don't be afraid of him. He's just bluffing. He can't hurt you. Tang Jing hurriedly reminded her. He was deeply afraid that she would be scared by the other. I'm not afraid of him. Li Xiaotian shook her head. The fear in her eyes gradually disappeared. Instead it became very firm. She walked step by step towards the Great Lord. A trace of panic flashed in the depths of the Great Lord's eyes. He bluffed and said, stop. Do you want to die? I've already died once. How could I be afraid of death? Li Xiaotian looked very indifferent. She finally walked in front of the Great Lord. The Great Lord could not hide his panic. He watched as she stretched out 2 fingers and poked his eyes. This action did not have the slightest murderous intent. It was as if she was taking a stroll. It was exactly this action that did not trigger the slightest attack from the non-phase method. Li Xiaotian did not use martial arts, but if those 2 delicate fingers were inserted into the Great Lord's eyes, his pair of eyes would certainly be difficult to protect. Finally, the Great Lord could not stand it anymore. He shouted, I'll kill you. In order to save his life, he had to give up the non-phase method. In an instant, everyone regained their ability to move. The Great Lord attacked Li Xiaotian, intending to kill her directly. Stop. Tang Jing had already expected the Great Lord's reaction. As soon as he regained his freedom, the shooting sun arrow flew out like lightning. The Great Lord's hand was about to hit Li Xiaotian's head when the shooting sun arrow arrived in front of his face. If he insisted on killing Li Xiaotian, then he would also die without a doubt. The Great Lord's eyes flashed with a strong unwillingness. He had no choice but to retreat. The shooting sun arrow flew past his cheek. Boom. The shooting sun arrow shot into the distant mountain rocks and the rocks were torn apart. At the same time, Tang Jing came to Li Xiaotian's side. He took her in his arms and flew back. The Great Lord roared, Tang Jing, I'll kill you. Tang Jing sneered, let's see who will kill who. Will you protect her? Letting go of Li Xiaotian, he turned around and rushed toward the Great Lord. In an instant the 2 people fought. The sky darkened, sand and stones flew, and it was abnormally terrifying. Tang Jing was a first-grade Yuanian cultivator, but after the Great Lord went into seclusion this time, not only did he recuperate from his injuries, his cultivation had also increased greatly, and he had already reached the 9th grade martial king. Amongst the warriors in the past 100 years, there was no doubt that he was the one with the highest cultivation. Compared to him, Tang Jing was also much weaker. It was just that the Great Lord's non-phase method was forced to be helpless and could not be used, so his fighting strength was greatly reduced. Furthermore, Tang Jing had the War Soul Sword, Heaven-Shocking Bow and Shooting Sun Arrow, so his fighting strength naturally increased greatly. For a moment, the 2 of them were unable to determine the victor. However, this was only a matter of time because Tang Jing was not a match for the Great Lord in the end. The Great Lord finally found a flaw and struck Tang Jing. Tang Jing flew backwards and spat out blood. He immediately stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The Great Lord took advantage of the situation and attacked again. I've played enough. The Empyrean Fairy shouted coldly, and came in front of Tang Jing, taking on the Great Lord for him. The Great Lord faced the Empyrean Fairy and the pressure increased. He immediately retreated, but was still forced back by the Empyrean Fairy. Tang Jing secretly sighed. Although he had reached the 1st grade of Yuaning, he was still weak. However, this battle with the Great Lord had already benefited him a lot. Looking at the battered and exhausted Great Lord, Tang Jing made up his mind. He turned his gaze and stared at the elder angler who was staggering and quietly escaping into the forest. The old fisherman was not an idiot. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, he thought of sneaking away. As long as there was life, there was hope. Elder angler, do you still want to leave? Tang Jing roared. With a point of his finger, the War Soul Sword flew towards the elder angler. The elder angler turned his head and saw the War Soul Sword flying towards him. He had almost lost his life to the War Soul Sword, so he was especially afraid of it. Thus he subconsciously waved his arm. With a flash of cold light, a fishing rod appeared in his hand, and he faced the War Soul Sword. Kacha. The War Soul Sword slashed the fishing rod and the War Soul Sword broke into 2. The elder angler simply abandoned the war soul sword and rushed into the forest. Tang Jing followed him like a shadow, and chased after him without a word. Seeing this, the great lord roared and narrowly dodged the Empyrean fairy's attack. Then he did not dare to stop and rushed into the forest. Chase! The Empyrean fairy shouted and chased after him like lightning. The others also reacted as if they had just woken up from a dream. Especially Wu Junshan, it was his first time seeing the Empyrean fairy's skills. It was truly shocking. The Azure Dragon Hall Great Lord, who was once invincible in his heart, was only SOSO. He was actually chased to the point of fleeing. He saw the elder angler jumping up and down in the forest like a monkey, his figure erratic. He was clearly using the familiar terrain to try and get rid of Tang Jing. How could Tang Jing let him succeed? He immediately drew his bow and the shooting sun arrow left the bowstring with a so sound. Seeing this scene, the elder angler was almost scared out of his wits. He no longer had a weapon in his hand, so he had no way to block this arrow. He watched as the shooting sun arrow flew closer and closer. Although he used all his skills, he dodged the shooting sun arrow. However, before he could catch his breath, he found that another arrow was already waiting for him in the direction he dodged. Although he was a second-grade martial king and Tang Jing was only a first-grade yuaning, Tang Jing had 2 saint artifacts. Even if there was a difference of 1 level, Tang Jing could still kill him. In the end, the elder angler had no chance to dodge. He watched as the shooting sun arrow pierced his chest, the tail of the arrow still trembling in his chest. A heart-wrenching scream burst out from his throat. Then, the scream slowly weakened, and the light in his eyes gradually dissipated. Finally, all the sounds came to an abrupt end. The world was completely silent. The elder angler fell backwards. Bang! He fell to the ground, his eyes wide open, and he breathed his last. The dignified Azure Dragon Hall Great Lord ended his life just like that. The Great Lord happened to see this scene from afar. His eyes were about to split open as he roared, "Tang Jing, I want you to pay with your blood." Tang Jing coldly snorted and said, "Your Azure Dragon Hall has killed so many cultivators over the years. You only have yourselves to blame for all of this." The Great Lord did not attack. Instead, he chose a small path and fled to the back of the mountain. "You want to escape? In your dreams?" Tang Jing chased after him. The Empyrean fairy also took the lead and chased after him. She expressionlessly looked at the dead elder angler, then focused her attention on the escaping Great Lord. When the others saw the elder angler's corpse, their reactions were much greater, especially Wu Junshan and Lan Yu. A dignified martial king had actually died in the hands of their son. All kinds of feelings welled up in their hearts. They were left far behind by their son. Tang Jing chased the Great Lord to a cliff in the back of the mountain. The mountain wind was biting cold. The 10,000 zhang cliff was a hopeless situation with no way out. The Great Lord also stopped. "You finally can't escape. You've always been curious about what kind of face you have under that mask." Tang Jing also stopped and stared at the Great Lord like a tiger eyeing its prey. Chapter 936. The High Lord looked at the group of people who were eyeing him covetously and laughed sinisterly. "Do you think you can kill me like this? You already have nowhere to run. Do you still dare to jump off the cliff? This is a bottomless abyss. No matter how high your martial arts are, I don't believe you can survive." Tang Jing said firmly. Even if I die, I won't fall into your hands." The High Lord was filled with righteous indignation. "Then do you dare to jump?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" After the High Lord finished speaking, he turned around and jumped off the cliff. Everyone cried out in alarm. They were truly frightened by this action. The High Lord actually jumped off the cliff to commit suicide. The High Lord's figure quickly disappeared into the fog below the cliff. Tang Jing stretched his neck to look at this scene. For a moment he was at a loss. The others also leaned over the cliff to look. The biting cold wind blew up from the cliff as if it wanted to sweep them down. Everyone retracted their necks and took a few steps back to distance themselves from the cliff. They looked at each other in dismay. "He died just like that?" Wu Junshan asked blankly. Ever since he knew of the existence of the Azure Dragon Hall, he was extremely afraid of the High Lord. But the person who made him so afraid died so easily. He found it hard to accept. Tian Chanzi said, "Although the High Lord is very powerful, but after all, there is a limit." Facing so many experts, he had no way to escape. Jumping off the cliff to commit suicide would be a bit more enjoyable. Lan Yu shook his head in disappointment. "It's just a pity that I don't know what kind of face is under that mask." Little Zheng said that there was still a jade-faced flying dragon, but I didn't see any trace of him. Wu and Li Xiaotian stared at the cliff. Wu felt relieved while Li Xiaotian felt a sense of relief. On the other hand, Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy were extremely calm. Their gazes intertwined as they looked at each other deeply. Unknowingly they saw something unusual in each other's eyes. Suddenly, their eyes slightly changed as they said at the same time, "Something is wrong. Maybe he is not dead." With Tang Zheng's understanding of the High Lord was definitely not someone who was willing to accept his fate. Even if he was in a desperate situation, he would not give up hope and not make a final struggle. This was completely out of line with his character and style. Therefore, the two of them determined that the High Lord was not dead. Hearing their words, the others subconsciously looked at the two of them in confusion. Although the Great Lord's martial arts were powerful, this was still a 10,000 zhang cliff. He did not have wings, nor did he have the ability to fly. How could he not die? Tang Zheng understood everyone's doubts very well. It was no wonder that he deliberately led everyone to the back of the mountain. It was because he had already thought of using this plan to escape. "Let's go quickly. Hopefully we can catch up to him," Tang Jing said without hesitation, his nerves tense. "Okay." Tian Chanzi agreed without hesitation. Then the two chased after him as fast as lightning. The deeper they went, the darker the cave became. In the end it was completely dark. The two were not in a hurry to light up the cave. Instead they groped around in the dark. They did not know where the High Lord was hiding. If they lit up the cave they would expose themselves and alert the High Lord, making it harder for them to catch him. The two did not make any sound of footsteps at all. Even their breathing was controlled so that it was almost inaudible. They were like ghosts quietly moving forward. They walked farther and farther and felt that they seemed to have reached the center of the mountain. This cave actually led to here, which was really surprising. Suddenly, a faint light came from the front, illuminating the cave. The two subconsciously slowed down and looked at each other. They knew that they were very close to their target. Finally, the light became more and more intense. The cave seemed to be lit by fluorescent lights as if it was daytime. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi's pupils shrank. The scene in front of them suddenly became clear. The cave turned into a hall, and there was something erected in the middle of the hall. When Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi saw this thing, their hearts could not help but beat violently. Their pupils also widened. This was a crystal. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi were very familiar with crystal. They had just brought back a large piece from the Swedish royal family. And this crystal was even bigger. They did not know what was hidden in it. At that time, the crystal was left behind by a meteorite falling on the ground. Could it be that this crystal was also left behind? But they did not know why it fell into the hands of the Azure Dragon Palace. The target they were looking for was in front of them. The High Lord was standing in front of the crystal attentively. He looked excited and whispered in a low voice as if he was whispering to someone. "No matter what the situation is, let's catch him first." Tang Jing decisively made a decision. The High Lord had gone through untold hardships to get to this crystal, and he was rambling like a person on the verge of death. But Tang Jing had a very bad premonition. The High Lord had gone through so much trouble. There must be a purpose, and it was far from being as simple as it seemed. Tian Chanzi also had the same concerns. Of course, he also had the same countermeasures. He saw that he went straight to the High Lord. The High Lord turned a deaf ear, as if he did not know that there were two enemies standing behind him. "Humph, let's see how long you can stay calm." Tian Chanzi stretched out his big hand and grabbed the High Lord. The High Lord cleverly dodged, then slipped behind the crystal and looked at the two with a sneer. Tian Chanzi caught nothing, but he was not discouraged. Facing a master like the High Lord, it was normal to miss in one hit. Tian Chanzi was not discouraged. He shouted, "Let's see how long you can be arrogant." After saying that, he was ready to go over the crystal and capture the High Lord. Just then Tang Jing shouted, "Be careful." Tian Chanzi's movements suddenly froze, and then he retreated like lightning. When he looked carefully he was overwhelmed with shock. The huge crystal began to change. It became transparent, but there was no strange creature inside. Instead there was a person, a woman. The woman was in her 30s. Her hands were closed and she was dressed in ancient clothing. There was a classical charm between her eyebrows. This scene shocked both Tang Zheng and Heaven Monk quite a bit. Why wasn't there any other unknown creature inside the spar, but a person? The crystal was a foreign object. Could it be that this woman was also from another world? There were people in another world and they were not all strange creatures. For some reason when he saw this woman, Tang Zheng's heart was suspended. He had a very bad premonition. The two looked at each other not knowing what to do. Since the High Lord deliberately came here, could it be that there was something strange about the crystal, or could it be that it could help him? The two were puzzled. Seeing the High Lord's provocative face behind the crystal, Tian Chanzi finally could not bear it and was about to rush over and beat him. But at the critical moment Tang Zheng pulled him back, because he saw that the crystal was shrinking. Before long half of it disappeared. Tang Zheng fiercely pulled Tian Chanzi's clothes and reminded him, "This crystal is strange. It keeps shrinking. It is completely different from our crystal." Tian Chanzi also nodded in agreement. This was contrary to common sense, so it was definitely not a good thing. The crystal was shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. The crystal was like melting ice, but there was no dripping water, nor was there a dense mist. The powerful energy was completely restrained and gathered in the woman's body. Both of them were stunned. They were very clear about how powerful the energy contained in a crystal was. The energy of such a large crystal was completely integrated into the woman's body. How strong was her body to be able to hold so much energy? Even the sea could not hold hundreds of rivers. Chapter 937. What kind of eyes were those? They were as vast as the stars, making people subconsciously sink into them and unable to extricate themselves. If one's cultivation was weak, they would be directly immersed in them and would not be able to control themselves. Tang Zheng suddenly remembered that the eyes of the unknown creature in the crystal had many similarities with this woman. Could it be that this was a characteristic of the members of that world? He did not know the answer, but he realized that the situation had become troublesome. He reminded, "Tian Chanzi, be careful of her." The Great Lord sneered, "It's too late. Consecrator, kill these two." Consecrator. Tang Zheng was shocked. The Azure Dragon Palace Hall had a total of 3 consecrators. Besides the Elder Angler and the fair-faced Flying Dragon, there was also the most mysterious female consecrator. It was actually this person. Li Xiaotian had only heard of her name but had never seen her before. As far as she knew, even her master, Granny Li, had never seen her before. No one would have thought that this person was actually in the cliff cave behind the Azure Dragon Palace Hall, and was even sealed in a crystal. Many questions appeared in Tang Zheng's mind. Since this person was a consecrator of the Azure Dragon Palace Hall, could it be that she was not a person from another world? But how could she merge into the crystal and absorb the energy of the crystal in an instant? No one gave him an answer. End of story. The female consecrator's eyes flashed coldly, and she was already attacking the two. Retreat. Tian Chanzi suddenly shouted. His senses were sharper than Tang Zheng's, so he had already realized how powerful this person was. Tang Zheng had a telepathic connection, so he turned around and ran, Tian Chanzi bringing up the rear. Whoosh. The two returned to the dark cave one after the other, and ran out of the cave as fast as lightning. The sound of the wind whistling behind them was very clear that the female consecrator was not far behind them. You go first. Tian Chanzi pushed Tang Zheng and turned around to face the female consecrator. Tang Zheng's heart trembled and he subconsciously shouted, Tian Chanzi, be careful. He did not insist on staying. Since this female consecrator was so powerful, he had to let the Empyrean fairy deal with her. Therefore he tried his best to escape from the cave and flew to the peak of the mountain on his sword. Immediately he heard a loud rumbling sound behind him. It was obvious that Tian Chanzi was fighting with the female consecrator. Tian Chanzi, you have to hold on. Tang Zheng prayed silently. He passed through the fog and saw the figure on the mountain peak. He shouted, Fu Yao, go and save Tian Chanzi. Whoosh. The Empyrean fairy swooped down and flew past Tang Zheng, disappearing into the mist. The others asked in panic, what's going on down there? Tang Zheng landed on the mountain peak. Seeing everyone's anxious expression, he hurriedly comforted them. Don't worry, everything is under control. However, his heart was beating like a drum. That female consecrator was too hard to fathom. He did not know who was stronger between her and the Empyrean fairy. Boom, boom, boom. Loud noises came from below. The fog rolled and the mountain peak trembled. The sound of fighting was very fierce. Suddenly, a few figures rushed out of the fog. The first one was Tian Chanzi. He looked a little embarrassed and had several wounds on his body. Tang Zheng was shocked. Tian Chanzi was already in the first tier of the semi-god realm, but he still looked so embarrassed. It was obvious how terrifying this female consecrator was. However, Tian Chanzi was not seriously injured, which was a blessing in disguise. The Empyrean fairy and the female consecrator rushed out of the fog together. The fog had been completely dispelled, as if it had been cut into pieces by thousands of swords. Seeing the battle between the two of them, the others couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. The two of them were completely floating in the air, and every move they made was extremely fierce. Even though they were very far away, there was a suffocating feeling that made it hard for them to breathe. The Empyrean fairy's magic weapon was a divine weapon, while the female consecrator had a string of bells on the back of her hand. When she shook her arm, the bells wouldn't stop ringing. The sound of the bells seemed to be magical. As soon as the demonic sound entered their ears, they felt their bodies become light, as if their souls were about to leave their bodies. Everyone, be careful of the demonic sound of the bells. Tang Jing quickly calmed down and reminded them anxiously. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. They felt like their hearts were swaying and they almost lost their minds. Immediately, everyone felt the power of the bells. As the bells shook, the crisp sound spread between heaven and earth. Circles of ripples swept toward the Empyrean fairy like waves after waves. The Empyrean fairy looked serious. Since she woke up, this was the first time she faced a threat. Her opponent's bells were also divine weapons. The key was that her opponent's strength was slightly higher than the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. For the time being, the Empyrean fairy couldn't determine a winner. The two sides were in a deadlock. Seeing the two fighting fiercely, Tang Zheng's thoughts ran wild. He glanced down the cliff and happened to see the Lord standing at the entrance of the cave, looking up at the battle in midair. Tian Chanzi, let's deal with the Lord, Tang Zheng suggested. Tian Chanzi was also watching the fierce battle without blinking. In his mind he recalled his thrilling battle just now. He almost died at the hands of the female consecrator, Tang Zheng. He couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Where did this female consecrator come from? How could she be so powerful? She was also in the divine transformation realm. The strangest thing was that she was also a cultivator. The Azure Dragon Palace had always regarded cultivators as their mortal enemy. Why would they have a cultivator as a consecrator? There were too many contradictions and he couldn't figure it out. After hearing Tang Zheng's reminder, Tian Chanzi immediately looked at the Lord standing at the entrance of the cave from afar. His killing intent surged. Whoosh! He turned into an afterimage, disappeared, and swooped down at the Lord. The Lord's expression changed when he heard the sound of something breaking through the air and the figure getting bigger and bigger. Tian Chanzi was still in midair when he slashed down with his sword. Only this sword was left in the world. The sword light flashed and the sword chi was thousands of rays. In an instant, it fell at the entrance of the cave. Panic flashed in the Lord's eyes. He didn't dare to fight back, but he didn't retreat into the cave. Instead he jumped off the cliff. Boom! With a loud noise, the entrance of the cave collapsed and turned into a pile of ruins. It buried the entrance and splashed up smoke and dust. The High Lord fell down quickly. A strong wind blew past his ears, causing his clothes to flutter in the wind. He suddenly raised his head to look, just in time to see Heaven Monk chasing after him like a shadow. The Lord didn't have the ability to fly, so he was at a disadvantage when facing Tian Chanzi. The Lord's toes touched the cliff, and the momentum of his fall was reduced sharply. He finally stabilized his body. He didn't know when, but there was a long sword in his hand. With a shake of the sword, he greeted Tian Chanzi who was falling from the sky. Tang Zheng and others had only seen him use non-phase method before, but they had never seen him use swordsmanship. At this moment, seeing this swordsmanship, Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi's pupils shrank at the same time. They were all masters of swordsmanship, so they judged the power of this swordsmanship at a glance. Ding! With a crisp sound, the sword in Tian Chanzi's hand and the sword in the Lord's hand were against each other. The two swords bent back involuntarily and bounced back. Clang! Both of them flew backwards, but Heaven Monk only took a step back before stopping. Then a sword came from the west, Heaven flying immortal. The Lord's sword flashed and the sword flowers filled the sky. In an instant they intertwined into a sword light. Kacha! The sword light dissipated, and the Heaven flying immortal broke all of the Lord's swordsmanship. It was extremely simple. With a flash of blood, the tip of the sword directly pierced the Lord's chest. Blood splashed. The Lord was quick-witted and jumped off the cliff directly, not letting the long sword pierce his chest too much. He was lucky to escape, but his eyes flashed with deep sadness. Once non-phase method was useless, he couldn't do anything to Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi didn't let him go. He chased after him and the two fell off the cliff quickly. Every once in a while, the High Lord would stomp on the walls of the cliff to slow down his fall. In the air, the female consecrator and the mysterious Lady of the Nine Heavens were locked in a fierce battle. When they suddenly saw this scene, they turned pale with fright. They immediately abandoned the mysterious Lady of the Nine Heavens and turned to rush towards the Heaven Monk in an attempt to save the High Lord. Tian Chanzi suddenly felt a cold, murderous aura behind him. He was shocked. The magical sound of the bell had poured into his ears. His soul suddenly trembled and his movements subconsciously slowed down a bit. While he was at a loss of what to do, a shooting sun arrow flew over from afar. The female consecrator's eyes turned and coldly stared at Tang Zheng, who was standing in the distance. Her eyes were cold. Her jade hand quickly reached out, and in a flash she firmly grabbed the shooting sun arrow. Suddenly she was pushed forward a few steps by the shooting sun arrow. She quickly stabilized her body and turned around, firmly locking on to Tang Zheng. "Go to hell." She softly said these two words. With a wave of her hand, the shooting sun arrow flew towards Tang Zheng. Its speed was not inferior to the previous one. Tang Zheng knew the power of the shooting sun arrow and quickly took out the holy armor shield. Clang! With a crisp sound, the shooting sun arrow fiercely hit the holy armor shield. Tang Zheng felt as if he was hit by a high-speed train. He quickly retreated. His arm was numb, and the holy armor shield flew out of his hand. Fortunately, the holy armor shield was a heaven-grade treasure. Although the shooting sun arrow was a sacred tool, it was not used with the heaven-shocking bow, so its power was greatly reduced. Otherwise, the holy armor shield would not be intact. Tang Zheng was well aware of this, so he immediately stabilized his body and picked up the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow in mid-air, afraid that his two treasures would fall off the cliff and disappear without a trace. The female consecrator's pupils constricted. She was extremely dissatisfied with the result, but the High Lord was in danger. She could not care less about Tang Zheng, so she abandoned Tang Zheng without hesitation and turned to attack Tian Chanzi, trying to save the High Lord. The High Lord was lucky enough to escape from Tian Chanzi's hands and gasped for breath. Tian Chanzi dodged from afar. Only then did he feel the overwhelming killing intent behind him, causing him to not dare to advance rashly. With this female consecrator, the High Lord had reversed the situation and was almost invincible. The female consecrator stood beside the High Lord and looked at the group of people expressionlessly. Empyrean Fairy and the others also subconsciously stopped their attacks. The short battle had already allowed them to have a rough understanding of each other's strength, and they understood that they would not be able to defeat each other in a short period of time. "Who exactly are you?" Empyrean Fairy was extremely curious about this woman who was on par with her. The female consecrator said expressionlessly, "Azure Dragon Palace's consecrator, Xian Yin." "Why are you helping the Azure Dragon Palace? You are a warrior, why are you helping the enemy?" Tang Zheng asked first. Chapter 938. Facing Tang Zheng's question, Xian Yin remained indifferent and coldly replied, "Although I am a cultivator, I am not the same as you." "What do you mean by that?" Tang Zheng was puzzled. "Because I am not a cultivator from this world, I am naturally different from you. Why can't I be your enemy?" Xian Yin said. These words were like a clap of thunder, causing everyone to be dumbstruck. Tang Zheng's head trembled and he immediately asked, "If you are not a cultivator from this world, then which world are you from?" He had previously guessed that Xian Yin was from another world, but he had later denied it. Now that he heard this answer, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. It turned out that he had guessed correctly. Since she was not from this world, it was possible for her to help anyone. However, why did she become a consecrator of the Azure Dragon Palace? Xian Yin swept his gaze across as if he had seen through Tang Zheng's thoughts and directly said, "Back then New Era was only able to build the Azure Dragon Palace with my help. Do you think there's a problem with me being a consecrator of the Azure Dragon Palace?" "You helped New Era build the Azure Dragon Palace?" This was definitely explosive news. Everyone was shocked and at the same time they found it inconceivable. But without any doubt she asked. This was definitely not her bragging. A light flashed across Tang Zheng's eyes as he came to a realization. "I understand. I have always been very suspicious about what kind of ability New Era had to be able to expel all the cultivators, but now I finally understand. He did not rely on his own strength. I'm afraid you are the key factor." Xian Yin looked at him with admiration and said, "You are really smart. You can actually rely on fragmented information to completely understand the truth." "Then why did you do it?" Tang Jing asked angrily, "Do you know how cruel this is to our world and even to those cultivators?" The reason why this world became a small world was closely related to the expulsion of cultivators. If there were cultivators, then this world would not have been demoted to a small world, and there would not have been any possibility of destruction. Xianyin said coldly, "This is not my world, why should I be merciful to this world? But what's in it for you?" Tang Jing was unwilling to give up. He would not give up until he got to the bottom of the matter. Xianyin smiled coldly. "Of course it's beneficial to me, but it's even more beneficial to my world. How can you guess the mysteries behind it? Then where exactly are you from?" Seeing that the other party was deliberately mystifying, Tang Jing asked again. "The other world, which is what you call the heavens beyond heaven," Xianyin said proudly. She was obviously very proud of the world she lived in. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. The realm beyond heaven was infamous. No one would have thought that someone from the realm beyond heaven would appear in this world. But now that Xianyin had admitted it herself, everyone realized that the situation had become very complicated. Tang Jing was anxious. This meant that the unknown creature was also from the sky beyond heaven. He gradually had a very bad premonition. He muttered to himself irresolutely, "You said that doing this would bring great benefits to your world, and you purposely banished the other practitioners to the sky beyond heaven. Could this be your goal? You need those practitioners?" Xianyin was slightly startled. She said in surprise, "You're really smart. Although I don't know you from your performance, you're definitely one of the best of the younger generation in this world." "I don't need your praise," Tang Jing said unhappily. "I just want to know your ultimate goal. What will you do to those expelled practitioners? Also, what benefits will this bring to your world?" Xianyin sneered. "You want me to answer your questions? Impossible." Tang Jing flew into a rage. "There are so many of us. Do you think you can escape? If you don't tell me the truth, I'll have no choice but to use the soul-searching book. Then all the answers will be easily solved. Humph, the only one here who can threaten me is her." Xianyin snorted disdainfully. She pointed at the Empyrean fairy and said confidently, "But if she wants to stop me, it's impossible." Tang Jing glanced at the Empyrean fairy. Seeing that she didn't refute this, it meant that Xianyin was telling the truth. If she wanted to leave, no one here could stop her. A high elder of the Azure Dragon Palace actually turned the situation around. Tang Jing was very unwilling to accept this. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't gain anything. At least he now knew that the Azure Dragon Palace could do such a shocking thing with the help of Xianyin from the sky beyond sky. But this was all history. What was more important was Xianyin's purpose for doing all this. What was this unspeakable purpose? Would it still threaten this world? This was what Tang Jing was most concerned about. The Empyrean fairy was silent for a while. Then she stepped forward and closed the distance between her and Xianyin. Her red lips moved slightly. "Xianyin, if you leave alone, I may not be able to do anything. But you're bringing a burden with you. Do you think you have an absolute chance of winning?" Of course, this burden was referring to the Great Lord. When the Great Lord heard this, his face under the mask turned red. Even his neck turned red. His eyes were burning with anger, but he was also helpless. With the Empyrean fairy's strength, she was indeed qualified to say this. He couldn't refute it at all. Tang Jing keenly sensed the Great Lord's embarrassment. He laughed mockingly. "Great Lord, you've always been hiding behind the mask and not showing your true face. You're like a rat hiding in the sewers. You can only watch from the shadows and live forever in the dark corners." The Great Lord was ridiculed by the Empyrean fairy. He couldn't refute, but when he heard Tang Jing's sarcastic words, he was furious. He clenched his fists so tightly that blue veins popped out. He couldn't wait to pounce on Tang Jing and kill him. Tang Jing naturally understood his thoughts, so he deliberately said these words to provoke him so that he would lose his mind and take off the mask. He was very curious about the face under the mask. The Great Lord took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He looked meaningfully at Tang Jing and said, "You're really a smart person. You actually want to use this kind of method to provoke me. Unfortunately, I've long passed that age. How could I fall for your trick?" Tang Jing secretly sighed. His plan had failed. The Great Lord was after all the master of the Azure Dragon Hall. He had too many outstanding aspects. This kind of small trick was indeed difficult to use. The Great Lord looked at Tang Jing and the others with ridicule. "I won't drag down Sir Consecrator. Besides, do you really think that you can defeat my Azure Dragon Hall just by destroying this place? Wishful thinking. If the Azure Dragon Hall was really so easily defeated, then it would have vanished into thin air for hundreds of years. Tang Jing suddenly said, "It's said that the Azure Dragon Hall has a lot of people, but this time I only saw a few people. Where did the others go?" "Haha, you finally learned to be smart and asked a crucial question. But why should I tell you?" The Great Lord laughed sinisterly. "All the answers will naturally be revealed once I capture you. You don't have that ability." The Great Lord retorted, subconsciously hiding behind Xianyin. A dignified Great Lord of a generation hiding behind a woman. If news of this got out, wouldn't people laugh their heads off? The Great Lord of course knew that this kind of influence was extremely bad, but in order to save his life, he decided to ignore it. Kill. Suddenly, a sharp voice came from the Empyrean Fairy's throat. Her figure flashed as she attacked Xianyin. Ever since the Empyrean Fairy had awakened, this was the first time her killing intent had been aroused. Even when she faced the Hundred Faces Star-Lord, she didn't have such a strong killing intent. That was because she felt a strong sense of danger from Xianyin's words. This wasn't just for her but for the entire world. In the face of external aggression, the Empyrean Fairy subconsciously regarded herself as the master of this world. Precisely because of this, she was especially angry at the Azure Dragon Hall who colluded with Xianyin. She swept a glance at the Great Lord, full of intense killing intent. It was as sharp as a knife, causing the Great Lord to subconsciously avoid her gaze. The Empyrean Fairy's attack was like a thunderbolt, powerful and powerful. The stately painting suddenly expanded like a curtain, covering the sky and covering everyone's heads. It was dark. The only thing that could be seen was the painting. The mountains and lakes on the painting became lifelike and rapidly expanded, as if they were identical to the real thing. A boundless power was emitted from the stately painting. This time there were no mountains, no torrents, no wind and no rain, but the feeling it gave off was even more oppressive and terrifying. This power was formless yet pervasive. Everyone present could feel it. As long as one was under the stately painting that covered the sky, no one could escape. However, the two groups of people felt completely different. Tang Zheng and the others didn't feel too uncomfortable. Although they felt the power of this power, it didn't attack them. Xianyin and the Great Lord felt completely different. The power attacked them from all directions, from top to bottom, from front to back, from left to right. The look in their eyes changed. This was a killing move, completely incomparable to the previous attack. Xianyin gritted her teeth and asked, "What kind of power is this?" "The primordial power." The Empyrean Fairy squeezed these 4 words out of her teeth. Her expression was unprecedentedly focused and dignified. The primitive force was a force hidden in the map of mountains and rivers of the gods and Vale. This magic treasure was refined by a supreme master in ancient times. It encompassed the heavens and earth, mountains and rivers, and was almost identical to the real world. However, the root of all this was the primordial power. It was a mysterious power that existed between heaven and earth. Ordinary people couldn't see it at all, let alone extract it and use it as a means of attack. However, the Supreme Master did it. This gave the stately painting great power. However, it was not easy to activate the primordial power in the stately painting. It consumed a lot of power and it also required the caster's strength. If it wasn't a matter of life and death, she would never use it easily. Just like in the previous dangerous battle, she didn't activate the primordial power. At this moment she was really angry. She was angry at Xianyin and the Great Lord, so she didn't hesitate to use this killing move to inflict serious damage on them. Chapter 939. Xianyin was from the outland, so she did not know much about the Chaos Force. However, this did not stop her from seeing how powerful this force was. Therefore, Xianyin and the Lord felt threatened at the same time and both of them used everything they had. Asterisk ring ring ring. Asterisk a series of sounds came from the bell in Xianyin's hand. The bell glowed with a bronze-yellow light and intertwined around her body. Gradually, it formed a huge bell that enveloped her. The sound of the bell became louder and louder. The light became thicker and thicker. It was as if a huge bell was protecting her. The Lord did not have divine powers like Xianyin. He stabbed the sword in his hand. Rays of sword light intertwined and floated above his head. Asterisk boom boom. Asterisk the chaos force finally fell. The rocks on the cliff shattered and fell to the ground, turning into dust. The bell formed by the light trembled. The sound of the bell became louder and louder. It was resisting the chaos force. Asterisk crack. Asterisk the sword light above the Lord's head did not hold on for long. It collapsed like a piece of rotten wood. Asterisk. Asterisk he spat out a mouthful of blood. The rocks under his feet shattered and he fell down the cliff. Seeing this, Xianyin roared, "Break!" The light of the bell shone brightly and the sound became like thunder. Asterisk crack. Asterisk a crack appeared on the bell. A beam of yellow light shot into the sky from the opening and collided with the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of Vale. The mountain river map shook violently and the chaos force was greatly reduced. The Empyrean fairy's eyes turned cold. She quickly channeled her inner energy. Asterisk. Asterisk Xianyin spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face turned pale. The crack on the bell grew bigger and the light dimmed. At the same time the chaos force weakened. The Empyrean fairy felt as if her energy had been sucked out of her body. Most of the vital energy in her body was depleted. She became a little sluggish. Xianyin took this opportunity to fly down. She grabbed the lord who was falling at a high speed. Holding the broken bell in one hand, she fell down the cliff. The Empyrean fairy had won this battle. Although she had used up a lot of vital energy, she was not injured. In order to save the High Lord, Xianyin did not hesitate to forcefully activate her magic treasure. In the end, her magic treasure was damaged and she was injured and vomited blood. When Tang Jing saw that the Empyrean fairy was on the verge of collapsing, he immediately rushed over to support her. With her soft body in his arms, he didn't have a trace of lust and asked with concern, "How are you?" The Empyrean fairy shook her head and said, "Chase after them quickly. If we let them escape this time, it won't be so easy to find them again." "Tian Chanzi, go after him," Tang Jing shouted. One should not pursue a cornered enemy. However, this group of people were not cornered enemies but ferocious tigers. Once the tigers returned to the mountains, there would be no end of trouble. Tian Chanzi dived down the cliff while Tang Jing helped Empyrean Fairy to the top of the mountain. He handed her over to Wu Junshan and the others and asked them to take good care of her. "You have to be careful too." Seeing that Tang Jing was about to chase after them, they hurriedly warned him. The scene just now had really taught them a vivid lesson. This was the strength of the strong practitioners. Their fighting strength was indeed extraordinary. They were far from being able to compare with them. In fact, they couldn't even compare with their own son. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu were deeply moved. Looking at the figure chasing down the cliff, the two of them anxiously looked at each other. There were too many inexplicable feelings in their eyes. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi flew to the bottom of the cliff one after another. From afar they saw the figures of Xianyin and the High Lord. The High Lord did not know how to fly, so he seriously dragged Xianyin down. He was caught by Xianyin and fell down awkwardly. "Stop!" Tian Chanzi roared and chopped down with the sword in his hand. From the top to the bottom, the power was terrifying. Xianyin looked up and happened to see that the sword light was about to fall on her head. Her expression darkened as she shook the broken bell. In an instant, a yellow light soared into the sky from the bell. This yellow light was much weaker than before. Its power was sharply reduced, but it met the sword light head-on. Boom! The two lights collided and exploded. The sky became incomparably gorgeous. The cliff was hit by the light and rocks flew everywhere. A large part of it collapsed. The two of them were actually evenly matched in this exchange. Everyone was shocked. Xianyin's face became more and more gloomy. The High Lord couldn't help but twitch his mouth. In an instant, the Empyrean Fairy had turned the situation around. The High Lord was flustered and exasperated, but there was nothing he could do. Tian Chanzi and Tang Zheng were overjoyed. They originally thought that Xianyin was more powerful, but it seemed that they had overestimated her. Her injuries were not light, and her strength had been greatly reduced. Unexpectedly, she was almost on par with Tian Chanzi. Tang Zheng calmed down and said in a low voice, "Tian Chanzi, this is a rare opportunity. Fu Yao is no longer able to fight against her. It's up to us now." Tian Chanzi nodded happily. "You're right. We have to use all our strength to keep them here." After saying that, he increased his speed and was already behind Xianyin. Xianyin waved her delicate hand, and the bell flew to her head. It kept shaking and the demonic sound entered people's ears, causing their minds to sway. Tian Chanzi's face darkened and he actually stopped. This demonic sound was very different from before. It was indeed powerful, causing people's minds to sway and almost lose their minds. It was precisely this short delay that allowed Xianyin and Tian Chanzi to pull apart the distance between them. They could see the bottom of the cliff very clearly. The lush forest was dark. If they fell into it, it would be easier for them to hide and escape. Tang Zheng was extremely anxious. He did not care about Tian Chanzi's absent-mindedness, and chased after them. In an instant he closed the distance between him and Xianyin. Holding the heaven-shocking bow in his hand, the shooting sun arrow slid past his fingertips and shot towards them with a shocking sound. Insignificant skill. Xian Yin snorted in disdain. Although her strength had temporarily decreased, she still did not put Tang Jing in her eyes. She did not even bother to use a magic treasure. She pointed her finger in the air, and a vast and mighty power surged out. The shooting sun arrow instantly stopped in midair. It was forcibly blocked by this force. But before Xian Yin could be happy, he realized that Tang Zheng's figure was actually right in front of him. This person is really not afraid of death. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. The bell shone brightly, releasing a soul-stirring power, and the ringing sound enveloped Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes became sluggish for a moment, then he regained his senses and burst out with a burst of shock. He felt that there was something strange in his mind, but after circulating his innate qi, he regained his composure. He finally understood one of the powerful aspects of Xian Yin. She not only attacked the physical body but also the mind. That bronze-yellow light attacked the physical body, while Ding Ling Ling's demonic sound attacked the mind. The most terrifying thing was that this demonic sound was all-pervasive, making it impossible for people to guard against it. He also finally understood why Tian Chanzi was absent-minded earlier. It turned out that it was the influence of the demonic sound. But why didn't he have much of a reaction? He guessed that it was because he did not have the inner demons. Just as this thought appeared, the voice of the inner demons rang out. "Young man, you're right, this woman's bell can indeed attack a person's mind. But it's too child's play, it can't be compared to mine." Chiyu scoffed and said, "You're pushing yourself to the top. This woman is not simple. Visitors from the sky beyond heaven have never appeared in our time. Perhaps they have discovered our world, so they sent people to explore it, just like how we send people to explore the sky beyond heaven. Their goal is obviously more aggressive than ours. Otherwise, why would she use tricks to expel all the cultivators to the sky beyond heaven?" The inner demons retorted. "That's natural." Chiyu did not object. "Then do you know what their goal is?" "Do you know?" the inner demons asked. "I don't know for now, but as long as we catch her, we will know." Tang Jing's heart moved and he hurriedly asked, "Do you have a way to catch her?" "Of course." Chiyu was full of confidence. The inner demons disdainfully said, "No matter how strong you are, this woman's attack is a mental attack. Your methods may not work." "Who said they're useless?" Chiyu said, unconvinced. "Then let's have a competition and see whose methods are more useful." The inner demons argued. "Let's have a competition, who's afraid of who? We'll each use our own methods and see whose methods are more effective." Chiyu said angrily, "Tang Jing, I'll teach you a set of leg techniques. This is my own creation called the heaven-splitting leg." What heaven-splitting leg? Such a flashy name, it's definitely not much." The inner demon scoffed. "Tang Jing, I'll teach you a mental attack technique called the mind manipulation technique." Tang Jing was secretly delighted. As the saying goes, when the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Chiyu and the inner demons did not see eye to eye and fought each other, which benefited him. These two were not ordinary people, and the techniques that leaked out from under their fingernails were not common either. "Time is of the essence, hurry up and tell me what to do," Tang Jing purposely urged. "I'll tell you. Why don't you evaluate who's stronger?" In a split second, 2 streaks of light appeared in Tang Jing's mind, and 2 sets of cultivation techniques immediately appeared in his mind. He was ecstatic. These 2 sets of cultivation techniques were definitely very powerful. Although he had only taken a rough look, he was already shocked by these 2 sets of cultivation techniques. The heaven-splitting leg was a perfect set of leg techniques. It focused on mobilizing the strength of the legs and strengthening the strength of the legs. Tang Jing had already cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell, and his entire body was as tough as steel, so the heaven-splitting technique was twice the result with half the effort. When his mind moved, an image appeared in his mind, and one move after another automatically evolved. This set of leg techniques was actually a quick method. In just a blink of an eye, he had learned everything. This set of leg techniques was extremely simple, but it was extremely exquisite and overbearing. There were a total of 5 moves, which were sweeping away 1,000 soldiers, stepping on mountains, divine dragon tail, heavenly blade revolution, and splitting the heavens and earth. This set of leg techniques would automatically increase in power as one's cultivation increased, but it also had an extremely high requirement for the cultivator's physical fitness. Not only did it have an extremely high requirement for the toughness of the legs, it also had an extremely high requirement for the control and flexibility of the body, Chapter 940. Tang Jing immediately shifted his attention to mind manipulation. Mind manipulation focused on mental attacks, which was the same as the demonic sound of the bell, but had many differences. Mind manipulation didn't require the help of an external medium. With a very short incantation and the corresponding mental cultivation method, everything would flow naturally. With a single thought, everything about mind manipulation was deeply imprinted in his mind, and the speed of learning was no less than that of heaven-splitting kick. Tang Jing had never practiced a mental attack technique, which was very rare in this world. Even the Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi didn't know how to use it. Therefore, compared to heaven-splitting kick, he was more interested in the inner demon's mind manipulation. Seeing that Xian Yin and the High Lord were very close to the treetops at the bottom of the cliff, Tang Jing grabbed the shooting sun arrows that were colliding with the copper-yellow light and chased after them. At this time, Tian Chanzi also caught up and said indignantly, "This woman is really powerful. She even used a mental attack technique. I almost fell into her trap." Mental attacks hurt people invisibly. Even if it couldn't kill the opponent, it was enough to make the opponent fall into an illusion. It was more difficult to guard against than other physical attacks. "I'll deal with her," Tang Jing volunteered. Heaven Monk looked at him in disbelief and said, "Can you do it?" "Tisich, how can a man say no?" Tang Jing smiled evilly and directly chased after the two. Tian Chanzi looked at him deeply and muttered, "This kid always surprises me. Don't you know that this is a scare? I can't do anything but you are so confident. Isn't this a blow to me?" Tian Chanzi wanted to cry but had no tears. However, he didn't stand by and watch. Whether Tang Jing was bragging or not, at least he would join the battle. Whoosh! The air was pierced with a sharp sound. Xian Yin's heart trembled. She looked up and saw 3 shooting sun arrows flying at her at high speed. Xian Yin felt bad. She had consumed a lot of energy. At first, she didn't take the shooting sun arrows seriously. However, the simple exchange just now gave him a new understanding of the power of the shooting sun arrows. The shooting sun arrows were definitely not as simple as she thought. This time, the 3 arrows were fired simultaneously, and the power was even greater. She threw the Great Lord down and said, "You go first, I'll catch up later." The High Lord's speed suddenly increased, and then he steadily landed on the treetops. Without any hesitation, he jumped into the dense forest and disappeared without a trace. Damn it, the High Lord actually escaped. Tang Jing cried out in alarm, but he was too far away. He could only watch as the Great Lord disappeared into the woods. Since the High Lord was nowhere to be seen, all the more reason he couldn't let Xian Yin go. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to gain much from this trip. His gaze locked onto Xian Yin as he leaped towards her. Xian Yin took out her little bell, causing it to fly up and float above her head, emitting a bronze-yellow light. 3 copper-yellow rays of light shot out from the bell, and met the 3 shooting sun arrows head-on. A dazzling light burst out in midair. The attack of the shooting sun arrows was neutralized, and the light also disappeared. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Tang Jing casually put away the shooting sun arrows that were at the end of their flight into his bag, and then stomped down. Step on the mountain. This was one of the moves of the heaven-splitting leg technique. In that instant, Tang Jing's entire center of gravity sank, and his legs glowed with a golden luster. This was the effect of the chaotic Vajra spell. He suddenly descended. His feet seemed to possess boundless power, enough to crush mountains. Moreover, the momentum of his descent was very compatible with this move, making it even more powerful. Bang! Xian Yin did not dodge. Instead, she relied on her slender hands to meet the enemy. She raised her hand above her head, and Tang Jing's foot just happened to land on her palm. Time and space seemed to have been frozen. In their eyes, there was only each other, and sparks seemed to be flying. Under that attack, a shockwave spread out in all directions from the point where the hands and feet collided. Tang Jing's momentum was stopped, but he did not stop his attack. Instead, he used the Heavenly Blade Revolution. Whiz! With a sweep of his long leg, it was like a long spear sweeping toward Xian Yin's head. A cold light flashed in Xian Yin's eyes. She naturally saw the power of this leg technique and reprimanded, "What kind of leg technique is this?" "Heaven-splitting leg," Tang Jing said indifferently as he increased the strength of his leg to the limit. Xian Yin immediately raised her hands to block, grabbing onto one of Tang Jing's legs, but the huge force caused her to take a step back. "Heaven-splitting leg? That's quite a big name," Xian Yin said sternly. Using all the strength in his hands, Tang Jing's leg that was being grabbed was about to break. Tang Jing immediately activated the chaotic Vajra spell, and immediately, a golden luster appeared on his legs. Xian Yin suddenly used all her strength, but she was still unable to injure her muscles and bones. She exclaimed in surprise as if she was surprised by the strength of Tang Zheng's defense. Tang Zheng still had some lingering fear, but he would not give her a second chance to use her strength. Although he was very confident in his chaotic Vajra spell, his opponent was an expert of the semi-god realm after all, so he did not dare to take the risk. Thus, with a move that could sweep away 1,000 armies, Tang Zheng's other leg swept towards Xian Yin's neck. A gust of wind blew over and she felt a chill on her neck, causing her expression to change slightly. This set of leg techniques seemed simple, but in reality, it had anticipated many situations in actual combat. It seemed ordinary, but in reality, it was ever-changing. There was a saying that no matter how many changes there were, it was still the same. This set of leg techniques was a typical example of this. The simple leg technique included many combinations and changes. A series of attacks made people unable to defend against it. Tang Zheng also gradually understood this point, and couldn't help but look at Qi Yu in a new light. As expected of the leg technique created by Qi Yu, there were many places where Qi Yu's shadow could be seen. This set of leg techniques was particular about being fierce and domineering. It was of the same origin as Qi Yu, and it was also suitable for Tang Zheng's style. Under the sweeping of 1,000 armies, Xian Yin had no choice but to let go of Tang Zheng and subconsciously retreat. Tang Zheng escaped, but he did not retreat. His body leaned back and with a forward somersault he struck down with one leg towards Xian Yin. Divine Dragon Tail Swing. At this moment, his leg was like the tail of a divine dragon, fiercely swinging down with a heart-palpitating power. At the same time, the dragon chi and dragon might in his body automatically mobilized. Pop! The air exploded like a firecracker. The power of this kick was even greater than Tang Zheng had expected. At Tang Zheng, the dragon god technique you cultivate is actually very compatible with this divine dragon tail swing, so it automatically mobilized your dragon chi and dragon might. The inner demons was surprised. Qi Yu said proudly, "Now you know how powerful I am. The cultivation technique I created is definitely not a small matter." The inner demons snorted but did not refute. From his point of view, Qi Yu did not seem to be bragging. Tang Zheng was secretly delighted. He silently circulated the dragon god technique. The power of this move was not yet exhausted, and it was even more powerful. Xian Yin narrowed her eyes slightly. If she was at her peak, she would not be afraid of these leg techniques. But now that she was seriously injured, it would not be so easy. Moreover, her opponent did not necessarily want to kill her. He only wanted to capture her. Moreover, as long as he could stall for time and wait for the Empyrean fairy to recover, she would have nowhere to run. In fact, Tang Zheng understood this, so he did not want to kill her. That was a fool's dream. Xian Yin gritted her teeth. She had never thought that she would encounter such a defeat. She was forced into such a sorry state by a first-grade Yuanying. Moreover, this set of leg techniques was very strange and powerful. It was not something that someone of his cultivation level should possess. She did not have time to think about it. She hurriedly circulated her energy, causing the bell to emit thousands of rays of light. The sound of the bell became even louder. The demonic sound entered his ears, and there was no sound anywhere else. It was completely poured into Tang Zheng's ears. Xian Yin had already realized that Tang Zheng's mind was firm. Ordinary spiritual attacks would not be effective. Therefore, she accumulated all the demonic sound in order to give him a fatal blow. If it was before, even if Tang Zheng did not have the inner demons, he would still be greatly affected. But now that Tang Zheng had learned the mind manipulation technique, he was able to comprehend spiritual attacks by analogy. As soon as the demonic sound entered his ears, he immediately activated the mind manipulation technique. Since the mind manipulation technique could take the hearts of others, it could naturally avoid such attacks. The inner demons were great at spiritual attacks. Compared to them, Xian Yin was still 10 streets away. Even if the inner demons revealed a little bit of their techniques, it was absolutely not to be underestimated. Xian Yin was originally waiting for Tang Zheng to lose his mind so that she could quickly escape into the woods and disappear. But she saw the corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curl up into a faint smile. Her heart trembled. She cried out in alarm. Bang! The divine dragon swings its tail directly shattered the light on the bell. With a cracking sound, another crack appeared on the bell. Ah! Xian Yin was shocked. The bell was a sacred tool. Its power had been greatly reduced because of the previous crack. This time, a part of it was actually destroyed by the divine dragon swings its tail, forcibly creating a crack. Tang Jing also did not expect this. The power of the divine dragon swings its tail was much greater than the original because of the effect of the divine dragon arts. Seeing Xian Yin turn pale with fright, Tang Jing moved his lips and chanted an incantation. At the same time he activated the mind manipulation technique. An invisible force enveloped Xian Yin. After all, she was an expert in spiritual attacks. She immediately reacted, her eyes releasing a terrifying light. You also know how to use spiritual attacks? Xian Yin's voice became sharp. Previously she only felt that Tang Zheng was a little extraordinary. But now she knew that he was the most troublesome person she had ever met. There were very few people in the world who were good at using spiritual attacks. She was only able to cultivate spiritual attacks because of a chance encounter. It was precisely because of this that she was chosen to come to this world with a mission. Spiritual attacks were not only used to attack others, but more importantly they could also affect others. This was a realm that many other physical attack experts could not reach. When she arrived in a new world and faced an unfamiliar environment, the spiritual attack technique was very useful. Moreover, she also shouldered an even more important mission. Influencing others would be twice the result with half the effort. Nuera was influenced by her, and then attacked the center of Wuxia from the wilderness outside the pass. In the end, she expelled the cultivators and completed her mission. Furthermore, Nuera established a new dynasty. If not for her appearance or bewitchment, none of this would have happened. This world would have entered a new world. Therefore she was the one who affected this world. Facing the attack of the mind manipulation technique, Xian Yin's mind almost lost control. Although her cultivation was high in terms of spiritual attacks, she was far from being as high as her own cultivation. Chapter 941. Xian Yin hurriedly activated the bell and enveloped herself in light in an attempt to defend herself against the mind control technique. However, she still failed. She felt as if her mind was in a trance and she was about to lose control. She was very clear about the serious consequences of losing control. It was very likely that Tang Zheng would control her mind and she would become a puppet. This was something that she had done to others before. She did not want it to happen to her even in her dreams. Tang Zheng did not expect the mind control technique to succeed and control her. Thus, he took advantage of the moment when she was distracted to raise his leg. Heaven-splitting earth. This was the most powerful technique in the heaven-splitting leg technique. In an instant, the aura of heaven and earth was stirred up by this attack. Tang Zheng's leg seemed to possess such great power. It broke through the air and rapidly descended. With a loud bang, Tang Zheng's leg struck the bronze-yellow light. With a crack, the light shattered. However, this attack did not use up all of its strength and still landed on Xian Yin's shoulder. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Her mind became more and more dispirited and unstable. Tang Zheng's will was like a sword and was about to drill into Xian Yin's mind. Xian Yin's heart trembled. However, she knew that at this critical moment, even if her cultivation level was much higher than Tang Zheng's, if she could not resist, she would become a puppet and would never be able to rise again. She unwillingly widened her eyes and stared at Tang Zheng, not bothering to hide the raging anger in her eyes. Tang Zheng was delighted. He knew that he was about to succeed. This mind control technique was indeed powerful. Of course, if not for the heaven-splitting leg technique, he would not have succeeded so quickly. This set of leg techniques was not inferior to the flying immortal sword technique in close combat. There was no need to rely on magical weapons. It was all based on one's own strength. It had indeed benefited Tang Zheng a lot. Suddenly his pupils shrank. He looked at Xian Yin in disbelief. This was because a mist rose from Xian Yin's body and enveloped her whole body. Tang Zheng found that his consciousness could not penetrate the mist and the mind control technique had lost its effect. He roared angrily. Was he going to fail at the last minute and let her escape this calamity? He was not willing to give up just like that. Another leg flew up, and a divine dragon swings its tail attack was launched. Bang! A huge repulsive force bounced back from the fog. His leg did not penetrate the fog and the repulsive force made his leg bones ache. He immediately realized that something was wrong, but it was too late, because the fog quickly condensed and turned into a crystal. She was sealed by the crystal again. Looking at this scene, Tang Zheng was shocked speechless. Except for Tian Chanzi and him, the others had not seen Xian Yin's previous situation, but seeing this change they were also shocked. Tang Zheng's shock was even more intense. because he knew that Xian Yin had been hiding in the crystal at first, but he didn't expect that she could actually control it as she pleased. Not only did she allow him to escape from the crystal, she could also seal him inside again. Tang Zheng's mind control technique could not penetrate the crystal to attack her, and the energy contained in the crystal was so strong that even a physical attack could not hurt her. Tang Zheng was not willing to give up, and with a flying knife, he kicked the crystal. The crystal fell down quickly, but it was not damaged at all. Tang Zheng sighed and quickly caught up with the crystal. Holding it in his hand, the crystal gradually turned from transparent to blurry. Xian Yin's eyes were filled with unwillingness and anger as she stared at him, leaving a deep impression in his mind. At this moment, Tian Chanzi came out of the forest. Just now, he saw that Tang Zheng had completely taken the initiative, so he directly rushed into the forest to chase after the High Lord. However, the forest was too dense, and this was an unfamiliar environment, so he did not chase after the High Lord and returned empty-handed. He glanced at the crystal in Tang Zheng's hand and said in surprise, "What's going on? Where's Xian Yin?" Tang Zheng pointed at the crystal and said, "She's in there. She sealed herself in there and we have no way to break it." Tian Chanzi still remembered the strength of the crystal and waved his fist in annoyance. This woman is really cunning. Previously, when he was being chased by Xian Yin in the cave, he was in a very sorry state which made him suffer a lot. When he saw that Tang Zheng had the upper hand, he thought that he could capture the other party, but he did not expect that she actually had a trick up her sleeve. Now, no one could do anything to her, so they could only stare at the crystal helplessly. Tian Chanzi looked deeply at Tang Zheng and said, "How did you do all this?" Tang Zheng laughed. "A hermit has his own clever plan." Then he jumped and flew back to the top of the cliff. The others had been watching them without blinking, so they had clearly seen the battle between Tang Zheng and Xian Yin. They had also seen Xian Yin's strange methods, so they all had complicated expressions. This was especially true for the Empyrean fairy, who frowned because she had never seen such a situation before. "Is there no way to get her out?" the Empyrean fairy asked curiously. Tang Zheng spread his hands. "I don't have a way, but you can try." "Okay, then I'll try." The Empyrean fairy clenched her fist and threw a punch at the crystal. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. Fortunately, Tang Zheng had firmly held onto the crystal, otherwise it would have been sent flying. The crystal was still intact. The Empyrean fairy's expression dimmed. She was very clear on the strength of her punch. Since it did not cause any damage to the crystal, it was enough to show how powerful it was. Wu Junshan asked with a complicated expression, "Then is there really no way?" He was a martial artist, so he could not think of a better plan, but he could not help but frown when he saw that everyone was in trouble. "It's not that there is no way, but it will take a lot of time. It's not something that can be done in a short period of time." Tang Zheng muttered, "It's good that there is a way. What is it?" Lan Yu was delighted to hear this and asked. Tang Zheng looked at the couple and said, "This crystal is a body of energy. As long as we absorb all of its energy, Xian Yin will naturally be able to see the light of day again. Then we will have a chance to deal with her." The Empyrean fairy and Tian Chanzi did not object, because this was the best way. However, the most important point was that Xian Yin could take the initiative to melt the crystal and escape. If she brought it back to the island like the previous crystal, then it would be a disaster. Once she escaped, the people on the island would become living targets. No one would be her opponent. Tang Zheng had an idea and suggested, "Why don't I put her into Sumeru Heavens? That way she won't be able to escape from me." Sumeru Heavens was Tang Zheng's territory. He had the final say. Anyone who entered it would not be able to escape. In addition, he could absorb the crystal's energy at any time and place. Over time, his cultivation would increase greatly. Even if she escaped in the future, he would not have to worry. The Empyrean fairy guessed Tang Zheng's thoughts and nodded in agreement after thinking for a while. "This method is feasible, but you must remember that she is very important. She is related to the conspiracy of the realm beyond heaven." "Understood. This is the most important thing." Tang Zheng nodded in agreement. The purpose of the other world was definitely not simple. If they did not figure it out, it would be a hidden danger. As for what happened to the cultivators who were expelled, it was also very important to know what happened to them. It was a pity that they did not have anyone from the realm beyond heaven by their side. The demons who returned from the realm beyond heaven had all died in a series of battles. No one could answer this question. So I should have captured a few demons who returned from the realm beyond heaven. That way, I would have been able to find out what the realm beyond heaven is all about. Tang Zheng sighed regretfully. There is no medicine for regret in this world. Besides, time will give us the answer. The Empyrean fairy did not mind. Tang Jing smiled. At this moment, Qi Yu and the inner demons were locked in a fierce argument. Both of them wanted to take the credit for themselves. They both said that it was because of him that they were able to capture Xianyin. They were in a deadlock. Tang Jing, you be the judge. Qi Yu said angrily. The inner demons also said, that's right, young man. You be the judge. Was it because of my mind manipulation that Xianyin had no choice but to give up and seal herself in the end? It was clearly my heaven-splitter leg's continuous attacks that exhausted her. Even without your mind-absorbing technique, Tang Jing could have easily captured her. Who needs your help? Qi Yu retorted. Tang Jing helplessly shouted in his mind, stop. This time both of you contributed. It was because of both of you that I was able to capture Xianyin. Young man, you can't say that. There is always a question of how much credit one has contributed. Who do you think contributed the most? The inner demons did not give up and asked. Qi Yu also said, that's right. Who contributed the most? Say it so that some people will understand their own abilities. Tang Jing suddenly had an idea. There was no doubt that this time he had gained a big advantage. If it wasn't for Xianyin, these two would not have been able to use Qi to teach him the heaven-splitting kick and mind manipulation. They must have many other skills or things that would be useful to Tang Jing. If they were fair and there was no competition between the two, it would not be a good thing for him. This time he had tasted the sweetness of competition and felt that it was necessary to drive a wedge between the two. If they continued to fight, he might be able to take advantage of them next time. He gradually had a plan in his mind. After thinking for a while, he said, the heaven-splitting kick was very useful. After all, with my cultivation I was able to suppress Xianyin. This is already incredible. Hearing this, Qi Yu laughed and said with satisfaction, inner demons, are you convinced now? My heaven-splitting kick is even more powerful. The inner demons snorted unhappily. But Tang Jing did not finish his words and continued to add. But at the last moment, the mind manipulation played the most important role. If it wasn't for the mind manipulation with the influence of the other party's demonic bell sound, I would not have been able to gain any advantage. It would have been impossible to force her to seal herself. So in the end, the mind manipulation was more important and more effective. Chapter 942. Qi Yu was stunned. He did not expect this to be the result. This was too much of a bully. He was indignant. Tang Jing, why is this the result? Tang Jing had already anticipated his reaction and calmly said, I am just speaking the truth. Qi Yu was furious, but he could not refute. After all, his heart was still in Tang Jing's hands. He angrily snorted and said, inner demons, don't be so proud. The inner demons laughed. I am proud. What can you do to me? Changing the topic, he said to Tang Jing, young man, what you said is the truth. Haha, I find that I actually like you a little. Don't. Tang Jing refused. I am not glass. What is glass? The inner demons were confused. Qi Yu disdainfully said, you don't even know this. What a country bumpkin. Do you understand the benefits of being gay? Disgusting. The inner demons was furious. Tang Jing was too lazy to pay attention to the two's argument, and directly put the crystal into Sumeru world. With a thought, the crystal's energy was continuously absorbed into his body from Sumeru world. This was just like absorbing air. He could absorb the energy of the crystals at any time and place, but he could not absorb too much at once. In other words, one could not become fat in one bite. He enjoyed this process very much. As for Sumeru world, the crystal became transparent, and Xianyin's eyes were wide open, but there was nothing she could do. Tang Jing subconsciously looked down the cliff and asked, can you really not find the High Lord's whereabouts? Tian Chanzi shook his head. This person is very cunning. When I chased after him, I already lost track of him. Tang Jing was helpless. All right, although it is a bit regretful, but this time the Azure Dragon Hall suffered a heavy blow, and also captured Xianyin, so this trip was not in vain. Marshall suddenly interjected. The Azure Dragon Hall's people are already mostly dead, and this is only a heavy blow? Tang Jing guessed what she was thinking and nodded. The Azure Dragon Hall's strength is not limited to this. We were too optimistic. Although we've gotten rid of Elder Angler and some flying guillotines, their true power hasn't been uprooted yet. Furthermore, the High Lord hasn't been caught yet, so he still has a chance to make a comeback. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu secretly nodded. They agreed with Tang Jing's point of view. They had been in the martial organization for most of their lives, so they could clearly deduce the general strength of the Azure Dragon Palace. The strength of the Azure Dragon Palace was definitely not limited to this. Otherwise, how could it lead the martial organization, the Li Palace, and the Sword Pavilion? Moreover, they had only killed a few flying guillotines this time. The remnants of the Li Palace, the Sword Pavilion, and the martial sect had not appeared, so the strength of these people could not be underestimated. I already know the whereabouts of Li Palace and Sword Pavilion. Tang Jing glanced at Li Xiaotian, who had not said a word since the beginning. This information was dug out from her mind. Since the High Lord has escaped, then let's make a trip to these two places. Tang Jing said. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu's eyes lit up as they cheerfully applauded. They were relatively familiar with the Li Palace, but they were very curious about the Sword Pavilion. This was because the Sword God was powerful and his actions were secretive, so the martial organization did not have much contact with him. The others naturally did not have any objections and walked down the mountain. Seeing Li Xiaotian remain silent, Tang Jing asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Li Xiaotian took a deep breath and raised her head. She squeezed out a smile, but it was very bitter. "I'm fine." Tang Jing nodded and said, "Don't think about the past. Put your thoughts on the future. People can't choose the past, but they can choose the future." Li Xiaotian's eyes lit up and she nodded, "I understand. Thank you." Tang Jing did not try to persuade her any further. The group quickly descended the mountain and headed towards their next destination. The Sword Pavilion was located on a dangerous peak. The precipitous cliffs were like a sword piercing the heavens. The Sword Pavilion had a total of 300 sword slaves, and the core of the Sword Pavilion was the Sword Hut. It was said that the Sword God had comprehended sword techniques in the Sword Furnace and finally reached great success. The Sword Pavilion was rarely visited by people. The highest peak in a chain of undulating mountain peaks was called the Divine Sword Peak. The steep and bumpy mountain forest seemed to have become flat ground under their feet. They were many times faster than ordinary people. They were unimpeded and arrived at the undulating mountain peaks outside the Sword Pavilion. Suddenly, the Empyrean Fairy raised her hand and everyone subconsciously stopped. "There's an ambush," the Empyrean Fairy said in a deep voice. Tang Jing's pupils constricted. The sword slaves of the Sword Pavilion should not be so close to the outside. They should be closer to the inside. However, the Empyrean Fairy would never make a mistake, so he warned, "Everyone be careful. Li Xiaotian, stay behind me. I will protect you." Li Xiaotian had powerful martial arts, but she didn't know how to use them. Therefore Tang Jing had no choice but to protect her. After this journey, Li Xiaotian's mood had stabilized, and he obediently followed behind Tang Jing. "Go." They took a few steps forward. Suddenly, whoosh, whoosh, streaks of sword light seemed to emerge from the ground as they strangled the group of people. The Empyrean Fairy was walking at the front, but she was indifferent. These sword lights could not hurt her at all. Just as they were about to get close to her, an invisible force vibrated from her body, and the sword lights shattered. At the same time, Tian Chanzi also acted. The long sword in his hand trembled, and sword lights scattered all over the sky, accurately intercepting those sword lights. In an instant, all of the attacks collapsed as if they had never appeared. This scene shocked the sword slaves hiding in the dark, and their breathing involuntarily quickened. Tian Chanzi's gaze turned, and he immediately locked onto the position of the sword slaves, and lightly slashed out with his sword. The sword chi was like a rainbow. The sword slaves were stunned. They had only seen this kind of powerful sword technique from their master, the Sword God. Who were these people and why were they so powerful? But there was no time to think and they subconsciously raised their swords to block. Crack. The long sword broke. They could only watch as the sword chi entered their foreheads. A line of blood bloomed, and their vitality was cut off as they fell to the ground, dead. Tang Jing knit his brows as he looked at the sword slaves and doubtfully said, "The sword slaves shouldn't be placed in such an outer area. They seem to have expanded the defensive circle." He had learned from Li Xiaotian's brain that the Sword Pavilion's defensive formation was very different from what he saw now. It seems like Song Yu did something, and changed the Sword Pavilion's defensive formation. Marshall's anger towards Song Yu had never decreased. Back then in the Imperial City, everyone had almost died in the explosion that he had detonated. This enmity was deep in his bones and he would never forget it. Thus, Marshall angrily said, "He definitely knows that we are not dead, so he is guarding against our revenge." Tang Jing laughed in disdain, "So what if he is guarding against it? These defenses will not change the outcome." Tian Chanzi urged, "Then let's hurry up and destroy the Sword Pavilion, then we can go to the Li Palace." The few of them continued forward, and not long after they met the second group of sword slaves. However, this time the number of sword slaves and their resistance were clearly stronger. It was precisely because of this that they believed that their actions had been exposed, so they immediately rushed towards the steep divine sword peak as fast as lightning. The few of them quickly cut through the chaos, and without any obstruction, they arrived at the foot of the divine sword peak. Everyone soared into the air, and with the tip of their feet on the cliff, they did not take the normal path, and directly rushed towards the top of the divine sword peak. Tang Jing held onto Li Xiaoyan's hand. She was extremely nervous, and her palms were covered in sweat. Whiz! A sword flew over from the top of the mountain, and directly shot towards Tang Jing. With a thought, there was no need for him to make a move. The War Soul Sword appeared out of thin air and welcomed the sword. Clang! A spark flickered, and the sword broke into two, but the War Soul Sword was still intact. Everyone had already flown halfway up the mountain, and were about to reach the top of the divine sword peak. Suddenly, the sound of something tearing through the air rang out, and 36 sword beams flew over from the top of the mountain, surrounding everyone. This is a sword formation, everyone be careful. Tian Chanzi immediately saw through the profoundness of the formation, and reminded everyone. Everyone braced themselves as the 36 swords were about to arrive. The 36 swords seemed to have eyes, and automatically split into several parts, each attacking their opponent, but at the same time responding to each other. Tang Jing was shocked. This sword formation was not simple, as expected of the sword pavilion. They had their own unique understanding of the way of the sword, and they also understood the essence of it. Without a doubt, the existing warriors in the sword pavilion were unable to control their swords from a distance, but they could use the sword formation to achieve a similar effect. But looking at the 36 swords that were moving freely, Tang Jing remained calm and composed. Seeing a few swords flying over, he waved his War Soul Sword, and with a clang, sparks flew, all of them slashing onto the swords. However, he felt a huge rebound force being transmitted from the War Soul Sword to his palm. Furthermore, with one strike, the War Soul Sword was not able to break the seemingly ordinary sword. The sword formation gave these seemingly ordinary swords different characteristics. Humph, you want to stop us with just a mere method. Tang Jing growled. The War Soul Sword shone brightly, the sacred artifact's power completely erupted, and a sword flew out. Shwa! A lightning-like sword light shot out from the War Soul Sword, directly slashing towards one of the swords. The person controlling the sword seemed to have sensed the danger and hurriedly retreated. However, it was already too late. Tang Jing's aura had firmly locked onto the sword. Crack! With a crisp sound, the sword light directly split the sword into two. The sword formation was damaged and its power was greatly reduced. Some of the swords seemed to be drunk as they started to sway. The others were all experts, so how could they miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Thus, they took the opportunity to counterattack. With the sound of battle, the sword formation was broken. The 36 swords broke one after another, and all of the attacks disappeared into nothingness. Everyone smiled knowingly. The tip of their feet tapped on the cliff, and then they soared into the air, steadily landing on the top of the divine sword peak. The sword furnace immediately appeared in front of everyone. The sword furnace was not big. It was like a straw hut, extremely simple and crude. However, in the eyes of an expert, this sword furnace was not simple at all. Every blade of grass and every tree contained the way of the sword. No wonder the sword god was comprehending sword techniques in the sword furnace. This place was indeed unique. Just by looking at it, it firmly attracted everyone's attention. However, their attention was immediately attracted by another matter. Chapter 943. In front of the sword furnace, a figure stood proudly like a desolate ancient sword. His two sword-like eyebrows were raised high, filled with sword intent. Chisha. This person was the sword god's disciple. He had fought with Tang Jing and the others in the Changbai Mountains. Tang Jing's expression was slightly cold as he stared at him. Compared to before, Chisha's aura was completely different. His cultivation had clearly improved by a lot. He still remembered Chisha's rising sun sword technique, so he did not underestimate him. However, with so many experts around him, he did not fear him. Tang Jing, it really is you. Chisha's tone was filled with boundless killing intent. You killed my master. This time I will make you pay with your blood. Chisha, are you the only one? Where is Song Yu? Isn't he the one in charge of the sword pavilion? Tang Jing asked curiously. 7 Kills said coldly, cut the crap. You'll have to get past me first. Alright, then I will test your skills. Tang Jing took a large step forward but was beaten to it by Marshall. Let me. Marshall said, Sword God's disciple, if you miss this opportunity, you won't have it again. The meaning of these words was very thought-provoking. The Sword God's bloodline would no longer exist from today onwards. Therefore she rushed to fight with Qixia. To her, Qixia was a very good opponent to train her martial arts. Ever since she started cultivating the Fire Underworld Divine Palm, her cultivation had greatly increased. Now she had reached the limit of a Xiantian martial artist, 9th grade Xiantian. She was only a step away from the Great Scholar realm. This kind of cultivation speed was simply unimaginable to her in the past. She had once fantasized that if she reached the Great Scholar realm in her 30s, she would already be considered very powerful. But now she was only in her 20s and was actually about to reach the Great Scholar realm. She was even more powerful than her master and master's wife. She was very clear on who the greatest credit should belong to. Qixia understood the deep meaning of Wu's words. His anger burned more and more. He said, Wu, you are in cahoots with these cultivators. I will take your life first and offer it to my master's spirit in heaven. Shua. He shook the long sword in his hand and performed the rising sun sword technique. The light at the tip of the long sword was as bright as the sun. It slowly rose from the sword as if a red sun had risen from the sea. Marshall crossed his palms, one cold and one hot, the two attributes alternating in the center of his palms. Now she had a deeper understanding of the Netherfire Divine Palm, and she understood more about the extraordinariness of this cultivation technique. When she first started cultivating the Inferno Divine Palm, it was very domineering, very similar to the Roaring Flame Saber that she used to cultivate. But later on she gradually realized that when things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. When the inner strength that was like a red flame was cultivated to the extreme, it actually gave birth to an extremely cold inner strength. Fire gives birth to cold, and when things reach an extreme they will reverse themselves. This made her feel the profoundness of this palm technique. It was precisely because of this transformation that her power had advanced by leaps and bounds, and her body had reached a miraculous state of harmony between yin and yang. At this moment, when she used this set of palm techniques, her palms alternated between hot and cold. In the end, her left hand was cold and her right hand was hot. If it was anyone else, they would have been tormented long ago, but she would not. 2 waves of inner strength silently circulated within her body. 7 Kills could also see that this set of palm techniques was extraordinary. He still roared and thrusted his sword forward. The sun-like sword light suddenly exploded, transforming into small sword chi. Like a shotgun, countless sword chi shot towards Marshall like marbles. Marshall did not say a word, both of his palms fiercely pushed forward. A vast and mighty palm wind that alternated between cold and hot swept forward, like a huge wave that could topple mountains and overturn the seas. Bang, 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 a series of explosions rang out as the palm wind and the sword chi collided. The two of them tapped their toes and rushed towards each other at the same time. In an instant, in front of the sword furnace, the two of them were like graceful butterflies, rising and falling as they fought. Although Marshall did not have a weapon, his hands did not lose to a weapon, especially the Netherfire Divine Palm. Cold and hot alternated, blazing and cold palm wind swept towards the opponent. The killing power was astonishing. Bang! A tree was struck by the palm and broke into 2. Ice gradually formed on the broken part, and even in the summer, it still emitted cold air. 7 Kills just happened to see this scene. His pupils constricted, his heart trembled, and he immediately slashed down with his sword. The sword chi was blazing. His sunrise sword art was also a very masculine sword art, so even the surging sword chi showed a masculine chi, which made people feel as if they were burning flames. The air shook and was slashed to the sides by the sword chi. Then a rainbow pierced through the sun and the sharp sword pierced straight through, directly reaching the top of Marshall's head. Marshall growled, both of his hands rose into the air, clamping down on the sword. The surging sword chi immediately tried to harm her hands, but his palms released 2 waves of inner strength, one cold and one hot, resisting the sword chi. Moreover, the sword underwent a drastic change. One side seemed to be burned by flames, turning fiery red, while the other side seemed to be covered in ice, turning snow white. In addition, the cold and hot energy spread upwards and soon, it reached the sword hilt. The entire sword body turned red on one side and white on the other, presenting a strange scene. 7 Kill's eyes widened as he looked at this scene in disbelief. He roared unwillingly, urging his inner strength to resist. However, crack. With a crisp sound, the sword broke inch by inch, turning into fragments that scattered on the ground. Seeing his sword destroyed, 7 Kills was heartbroken and furious, but there was nothing he could do. With a thought, Wuxia pushed both of his palms forward. Peng peng, 2 palms struck Qisha's chest at the same time. 7 Kills flew backwards into the sword furnace, leaving behind a long trail of blood in the air. Marshall took advantage of the opportunity to pursue and enter the sword furnace in a flash. This sword furnace was very simple and crude. It was a small pavilion made of straw, surrounded by simple wooden walls. 7 Kills broke the wooden door and entered the pitch-black sword furnace, while Marshall chased after him and disappeared into the darkness. Suddenly Tang Jing became alert and shouted, "Don't chase after him." In a flash, he chased after him, but just as he reached the door, a figure flew out. His gaze turned cold as he hurriedly caught it. It was Marshall that had fallen into his embrace. Marshall gasped for breath, his face pale, and said, "There's danger in the sword furnace." Seeing that she was fine, Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief and comforted her. "You step back first, I'll take care of him." Marshall was a little angry. His strength was clearly higher than 7 Kills, but after entering the sword furnace, he somehow suffered a blow and was actually kicked out in a sorry state. "Be careful." Marshall clenched his teeth and warned. Tang Jing nodded his head lightly and walked into the sword furnace with large strides. When he crossed the threshold, a wave of hot air assaulted his face. Taking a closer look, he actually found a huge furnace in the middle of the sword furnace. It was filled with bubbling hot molten iron, and beside it were swords that had not been forged yet. They were bright red and emitting hot steam. 7 Kills stood in front of the furnace, staring straight at Tang Jing. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, his expression was dispirited, but his brows were extremely ferocious. "Tang Jing, you killed my master. I am not skilled enough, so I have no way of taking revenge for my master, but I will not admit defeat," 7 Kills said in a powerful voice. Tang Jing coldly snorted and asked, "7 Kills, you are inverting black and white. If it wasn't for the sword god coming to kill me, how could he have died in our hands? Are we going to stretch out our necks and wait for death?" 7 Kills was speechless. After a long while he said, "I don't care. In any case, master died in your hands." Tang Jing shook his head, he did not want to argue with him and said, "I only want to ask you one question. Where are the other people from Sword Pavilion? Where is Song Yu?" There were a total of several hundred sword slaves in Sword Pavilion, but they had met too few sword slaves along the way. Furthermore, they did not see any other sword slaves on the Divine Sword Peak, so he was very curious. 7 Kills said sinisterly, "Song Yu is the same as you, ambitious and cowardly. When he heard that you were attacking, he actually abandoned Sword Pavilion and escaped with his people. If Master knew in the underworld, he would definitely be ashamed and regret passing down Sword Pavilion to him." 7 Kills was angry and unwilling but also heartbroken. Furthermore, there were 2 handprints on his chest, one red and one white, one fire and one cold, making him look even more desolate. "Escaped." Tang Jing raised his eyebrows. This Song Yu was truly cunning, his ability to run away could be considered first class. Back in the capital, he had also escaped when the situation was bad. Now that he had heard the fighting outside, he did not hesitate to escape with a group of sword slaves. Those cowards deserve to die. They listened to Song Yu's bewitchment and have already betrayed Sword Pavilion. They are not worthy of being Sword Pavilion's people. 7 Kills angrily accused. Tang Jing secretly nodded. After all, Song Yu was a member of a large family. He was eloquent and had many methods to bewitch people. Of course, he was not someone who only knew martial arts like 7 Kills could compare to. In the Sword Pavilion, although Qisha's seniority was higher than Song Yu's, he couldn't compare to Song Yu in terms of small tricks. This result was not out of Tang Jing's expectations. However, the cooked duck had flown away, which made Tang Jing very unhappy. He asked, "Where did they escape to?" "Don't say that I don't know. Even if I knew, I would definitely not tell you," 7 Kills said sinisterly. Tang Jing inwardly shook his head. He knew that he would not be able to dig out any useful information from him. 7 Kills, you were clearly not Marshall's match just now, but you forced her back and even injured her. You haven't used up all your tricks yet, right? This time, I will personally witness your skills because you will not have this chance in the future. Tang Jing had the confidence to say these words. 7 Kills did not refute him, but his eyes kept changing. In the end he firmly locked onto Tang Zheng. He became resolute and said, "I will die with you." Boom. With a loud sound, he overturned the furnace beside him. Fiery red molten iron spurted out from the furnace and splashed in all directions. The sword furnace immediately caught on fire. At the same time, 7 kills grabbed an unfinished long sword from the furnace. The long sword was fiery red and sizzling sounds came from his palm. There was a burnt smell coming from it. However, he did not feel anything. Instead, his face was completely red as he pounced towards Tang Zheng. The fiery red long sword in his hand lit up. The light was boundless, as if it really was a blazing sun, releasing all of its light and heat. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.